Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching what if Fem-Naruto was experimented by Orochimaru and gained the power of the first Hokage. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
It was gloomy. The blood-soaked bed in the middle of the room was the only thing illuminated by a tiny, dim yellow light. One man was waiting for his work to be finished with patience when he watched the vial of blood spill into the surgical hose. He rubbed his long black hair and smiled broadly after flowing downward and entering the body of the intended target. It vanished. A girl lay in the middle of the bed, heavily sedated into unconsciousness. Despite being heavily sedated, her face was covered in sweat and her long blonde hair was covered in dried blood. The man said, "If this works, then I might be able to do this to myself." Without addressing anyone specifically, suddenly, the unconscious blonde opened her eyes, letting out an ear-piercing scream as her small frame was enveloped in a faint red light. It ended exactly as planned, and she collapsed back onto the bed, unconscious again. The man hurried over to look at the meters, readings, and graphs that the machines had produced. He scowled. "Failed," was all he could manage to say. He then pulled out a sharp scalpel and brought it near the young girl's throat. He started to run it over the sensitive skin, but was stopped by a hand. He gave the newcomer a smile as he turned his head slightly. "Sarutobi-sensei," uttered the creature. "Orochimaru," said the recently exposed Hokage. "It seems you have not changed one bit." Now exposed as the most formidable of the fabled Sannin, the man merely chuckled. "I am sorry, sensei, but it seems that I must take my leave." The old man and the unconscious blonde were left alone when he vanished in a whirl of leaves. With a sigh, he let go of the long, black staff he was gripping. It transformed into a big, white-furred ape with a Konoha headband around its forehead and poofed itself out of existence. The white ape Enma remarked, "Sarutobi, this is the second time you have released him." The third said, "I know, old friend, I just couldn't do it." With a sorrowful sigh, he started unplugging the numerous gadgets that were plugged into her small body. After giving her long blonde hair a gentle pat, he carried her out of the dark room. "Let's go, Enma," he said, wrapping his protective hands around the young child. "I have to make sure Orochimaru did nothing dangerous to her." The ape gave a nod and vanished from view. After giving the blonde a strong illusionary spell, the elderly man sighed and headed to the hospital. 4 months later, time jump as the inebriated crowd of shinobi and civilians alike pelted him with weapons and other objects. A blonde boy was running as fast as he could, dodging clumsily left and right. His legs were tired and sore from running, and he was gasping for air, but he dared not slow down even a fraction of a second for the sake of life. Sweat drips from his face onto his eyes, causing them to sting and make him blink. They were slowly but surely catching up to him now. It won't be long. He was still being chased and thrown objects by the people at this precise moment. One of the more seasoned ninja leapt to his feet and threw a few shuriken at the blonde child. One of the sharp metal weapons sank deep into his calf, causing him to scream and come to a crashing stop. Now, as they cracked their knuckles and readied their fists and weapons, the crowd gathered around him and circled him slowly. As he protected himself from the pelting blows and weapons, he thought, "It has begun." He was aware that no matter what they did, he should not scream or give in to their torture because doing so would have disastrous results for him. He also refused to give them the pleasure of seeing him writhe as they threw him to the ground. It would be more honorable and proud to pass away than to live and give them the satisfaction of knowing that they had him at their mercy and pleaded for his life. No, he would prefer to pass away. A masked man spied on the crowd and their activities deep in the shadows. He was soon lost in a whirl of foliage. The third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, was an elderly and weary man. He had hoped to retire, but there had been no qualified successors since the fourth had been killed in combat. He was now facing the scourge of all cages, the invincible foe of all leaders. Paperwork. Abruptly, an Anbu kneeled in front of him. When the Anbu said, "Hokage-sama, I bring urgent grave news," the elderly man signaled to deliver the news with a slight nod. "The child," the man on his knees began, gaining the old leader's undivided attention. Sarutobi hurriedly inquired, "What has happened?" "There is a mob," begins the Anbu. Unfortunately, the Hokage already knew what was happening, so he didn't have to finish. The old man yelled, "Take a squad. Get him out of there, immediately." With a nod, the Anbu vanished. Shortly after, he came back with the blonde boy safely in his arms, his clothes and ninjutsu smeared with new blood. According to the Anbu, "Hokage-sama, there were casualties in the mission." Sarutobi understood its meaning. In order to save the boy, they had to murder the mob. He gestured for the Anbu to leave the boy in the office after nodding. He then called in his own personal doctor, a woman in her early 40s who had an unwavering devotion to the elderly Hokage. She sighed as she unpacked her medical supplies after giving the boy a quick glance with her hands clenched into a tiger seal. She knelt next to him and whispered, "Genjutsu Kai." The wounded boy started to transform almost instantly as his hair grew longer. It was styled into 2 high pigtails. The body eventually assumed the shape of a young girl, and the boyish facial features gave way to a more narrow feminine face. The elderly man peered over the doctor's shoulder and inquired, "How are the injuries?" The woman gave a headshake. She gave a thoughtful response, "Not unhealable, given her condition. I worry about the mental scarring effect it will have on one so young." All the elderly man can do is sigh. "She needs to be able to defend herself," she said bluntly, staring directly into the tired Hokage's eyes. "She needs to become a kunoichi." The elderly man gave a nod. "I will see to that personally. She will learn to be a kunoichi." 2 years later, time jump. Naruto took the backseat in Iruka's class. As he usually does, Naruto simply showed no interest in what Iruka was teaching the class about the value of alliances among the hidden villages. His eyes became distracted when he put his chin on his hand. His thoughts quickly returned to the previous events that had taken place 2 years prior. Rewind. She heard some voices and opened her tired eyes. Her body screamed in agony as she awoke to full consciousness. And all of her senses immediately came into play. She noticed that her entire body was heavily bandaged. When she looked down, she could just as easily be a mother. "You are awake, child," the Sandaime said, approaching her bedside and giving her a head pat. All she could do was nod. The Hokage's personal doctor appeared next to the Hokage and stated, "You have suffered heavy physical damage to your limbs." The young blonde examined her limbs. Her left arm was pulsing as though it had its own pulse, and she was unable to move her right leg. Her upper body was bandaged from the tummy up to the shoulder down, and her throat was croaking from dryness as she attempted to speak. Even breathing was painful. "Broken ribs as well," said the doctor. "Gigi," mumbled the young blonde with a snap of his head. The elderly man turned to face the blonde. "When can I drop the illusion?" The elderly man began, "Naruko, my child," and gave her long blonde hair a fatherly pat. "If you were to drop it now, while you are unable to defend yourself, then the consequences would be even more dire than what you have suffered now." "Sandaime," the doctor said. She gave the old man a sidelong glance and said, "We must teach her the way of the kunoichi." The elderly man could only look into her eyes and sighed while nodding. "I agree, Eboshi," said the elderly man. "She cannot be disguised under the genjutsu as a boy forever. Naruko, for your safety, as well as to prepare you for the eventual release of the illusion, you will have to go through training as a kunoichi. I am afraid that it is the only option that is present," the elderly gentleman said with certainty. The blonde grinned and nodded as the elderly Hokage embraced her small body. The end of the flashback. The lecture was over a while ago. Naruto sat while Iruka rambled on about something else, like the village's illustrious past and how the Shoden vanquished Uchiha Madara so long ago to establish peace and prosperity in the area. He glanced down at his arms, which were boyish. He detested acting like a boy. Although she had no choice, she did not want to live this life. Imagine what the people would do to a helpless little girl if they were mean enough to brutally beat up a young boy. The old man had assured her that she could remove the illusion that had been imposed upon her as soon as she learned how to properly defend herself. In order to avoid being a sore thumb, the elderly man also advised keeping a low profile and blending in as much as possible. Since the third has designated a few reliable individuals to supervise her training, it has been going well. Although it was challenging at first and the instructors were brutal, they were ensuring she was prepared for the next phase of training. The class was over when the bell rang. After rising from his chair, Naruto slid past everyone in the classroom and made his way to the training area. The third has clarified what can and cannot be done with strengths. Rewind. "Now, Naruko," he said, turning to face the small, fair-haired 6-year-old. "As we begin training, I need you to understand this. The strength that we use is not for getting revenge, or is it used to blackmail or threaten people?" With her long, silky hair gleaming in the sunlight, the blonde gave the elderly man a curious look. "There are a lot of people who use it like that, Gigi," she said bluntly. With regret, the third said, "Sadly, yes, they do. They misuse their strength selfishly. They are blinded by rage, greed, grief. Their need to satisfy their own selfish ego has pushed them to abuse their strengths." She said, "What make me different, Gigi? I face the same temptations they face every day. What's stopping me from becoming like them?" His response was, "Because, my child, you have the will of fire." The blonde appeared truly perplexed by the remark. The will of fire is the will to protect your important friends and loved ones from danger. Only then the true extent of your strength can be seen. She questioned the elderly man. "Who is important to you then?" The elderly man hesitated. He started by saying, "Well, first there's my grandson." He gestured to her and said, "Then you, and the rest of the village." When Naruko heard his response, she grinned broadly. "Gigi, You're important to me too, she said, embracing the elderly man tightly. With that, the old Hokage said, all right, Naruko, we have to start on your training, and let go of the girl. Now, the first lesson in the way of the ninja, taijutsu. End of flashback. On his way home from training, Naruto passed the Uchiha compound. He didn't usually go this way, but for some reason, he did like a gut instinct pulling at his body. It was inexplicable. The golden sun was lowering its rays, casting a warm orange glow that would soon dissipate into the night sky. As she passed the main gates into the compound, which was more akin to a village than a clan compound, she recognized a familiar face. Naruto yelled, Itachi-san. At the aforementioned individual looked down at him in response. Today, Naruto noticed a problem with him. Itachi appeared a little tense, as if he were getting ready for a big fight. Naruto-kun, said Itachi, what brings you here? Not much, replied the young blonde. Just thought I tried a different route back home today. He took another close look at the Uchiha prodigy. There was something wrong with him in his soul. Naruto sensed it. Suddenly, he said, am I going to see you again, Itachi-san? The question took Itachi by surprise. Nevertheless, he leaned over and rubbed his blonde hair. Itachi replied, I will be gone for a long time, which made Naruto frown. He whispered the final line into her ear, but, one day, I will see you again, when the time is right, Naruko-chan. She gave him a hug in return. Itachi taught Naruto ninjutsu and taijutsu, so it made sense that he was one of the few people who knew Naruko rather than Naruto. I will miss you, Itachi-san, he said, giving the older boy a hug. I love you, you're like a brother to me. A whisper, Naruko-chan, just remember this, he said. No matter what I am doing, no matter what, I will always protect you in any way I can. I will miss you. The entire village was informed the next morning that Itachi had ruthlessly killed his entire clan, leaving only his brother alive. 6 years later, time skip. Naruto circled the training ground, running from tree to tree. She was being treated badly by this man, Kakashi. He was extremely talented and slightly conceited. Additionally, his alleged teammates were hiding away, figuring out how to get the bells off that man's waist while trying to come up with a strategy to outsmart the silver-haired man. He paused on a branch. He sighed, unable to come up with any. He was mentally and physically exhausted from what had transpired the previous evening for him. Last night was undoubtedly a bad night. The disclosure of secrets had a negative psychological impact on him. Rewind. Knowing what would happen if he was discovered by the people pursuing him, he ran as quickly as he could. He had the forbidden scroll securely fastened to his back. Some of the scroll's contents had already been read by him. Not all of the scroll could be read in the allotted time, however. Before he could get away, he was captured by Mizuki, the traitor shinobi. He yelled, hand over the scroll, brat. At the blonde, Naruto frowned as he glanced up at the branch he was standing on from the ground. You tricked me, he informed me. Naruto stood his ground and said, I won't hand it over to you. Iruka appeared out of nowhere and positioned himself between him and Mizuki just as he was about to attack. He yelled, Naruto, run! As he moved to confront Mizuki, get the scroll back to the Hokage. Mizuki laughed as Naruto nodded and turned to go. It was chilling and malevolent. Oh, Iruka, I thought you would use this chance to take revenge for your parents' deaths. Naruto and Iruka both froze. He gestured to Naruto and exclaimed, after all, the Kyuubi is right here with us. Naruto trembled as he said, Iruka-sensei, what is he talking about? When he saw Iruka's arm, his heart began to race. He was holding his kunai so tightly that it was nearly whitened. He was trembling all over his arm. Come on, Iruka, you will never get another chance like this again, Mizuki yelled. He gestured toward Naruto. You, he exclaimed. Do you know why people hunt you down like a dog you are? Why they beat you to death like a piece of worthless shit? Naruto's gaze expanded. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together. All of a sudden, everything made sense. The name calling, the spitting, the beatings, and the need to conceal the true gender. It was as clear as the starless night and the cloudless day. Because, exclaimed Mizuki, are the demon fox Kyuubi. You have it sealed into your body. Is it true? Inquired the young man. The tears streaming down his whiskered cheeks were obscured by the rain that had started to fall from the sky. Yes, he was aware that it was true, but for his own comfort, he wanted to be sure. He secretly hoped it wasn't. However, it was not to be. It was the status quo. With a, I'm sorry, Naruto, Iruka started, the Kyuubi is inside you, sealed by none other than the Yondaime. As the rainstorm intensified into a thunderstorm, Naruto collapsed to the ground in defeat. Iruka turned to look at the blonde boy, who was drenched from head to toe. Iruka started by saying, I have never once thought you as the demon fox. Naruto raised his head to look into his eyes. While I wish I could kill the demon with my bare hands, I recognize that you are not him. You are but a child, Naruto, who has been unlucky enough to be chosen as the jailer of a demon. It was not your fault my parents died. Iruka, my friend, mockingly said Mizuki. So weak, vengeance is right in front of you and you chickened out like a little bitch. Iruka pivoted and assumed a combat position. No matter, said the betraying ninja. You both shall die by my hand. Mizuki then grabbed the Fuma shuriken and threw it toward Iruka. Iruka attempted to block it, but Mizuki appeared behind him and slashed across his back, proving that it was a ruse as the blade cut through Iruka's flesh and drew blood. He screamed. Iruka collapsed to the ground, his limbs immobile due to pain as the events played out in front of his eyes. Naruto watched in horror. Naruto! Exclaimed Iruka. Run! Naruto thought about what he should do. On the one hand, the ninja in front of him wants to kill him in order to obtain the scroll, which was valuable. However, departing will ensure Iruka's demise. The old man Hokage's words were still echoing in his mind. Keep the people you care about safe, since they define your identity. As Mizuki came closer, Naruto assumed a fighting stance, taking another Fuma shuriken. The traitorous ninja leapt into the air and threw it in his direction to avoid being struck. Naruto did a backflip. Muted, Genjutsu Kai, he said. His boyish features abruptly vanished and were replaced by more feminine ones. Her spiky hair had been replaced by two pigtails that hung well past her back under a black miniskirt and a short-sleeved green t-shirt. She wore battle shorts that hid a third of her thighs. Oh! Cried Mizuki abruptly. The Kyuubi is a girl. Imagine what the people will do to her. Iruka was stunned. The sight of the girl before his eyes made it impossible for him to speak. His mind was racing with millions of ideas, but he was only focusing on one. Is Naruto a girl? I wanted to show you the real me, Naruko stated, before I take your life. Iruka's eyes widened as Mizuki smirked and swiftly formed hand seals, culminating with the tiger seal. Naruto! He shouted, warning. Kaden! Jutsu no Gokakyu! From Mizuki's mouth, a massive ball of fire erupted, racing in Naruko's direction. When Naruko noticed the approaching fire, she swiftly slammed both of her hands onto the ground after running them through some seals. Doden! Gashi Doro! After backflipping, Naruko landed, her hands completed another set of seals, and she pulled a larger rectangular piece of earth, making it stand upright and blocking the incoming fireball. Earth and fire collided in a huge boom, sending Naruko flying back a few feet. Sweden! Miserapa! Mizuki jumped up a tree to avoid the attack, which proved to be the wise move, as the area he was standing in was now a small crater. Naruko finished her hand seals before the traitor ninja could react, and a powerful jet of water erupted from her mouth, traveling at great speeds towards the intended target. Kaden! Enden! As a jet of fire shot in Mizuki's direction, he hurried through his seals as well. Kaden! Gukakyu! As fire met with fire, there was a battle for dominance as the two ninjas struggled to push chakra into their attacks. Naruko was tiring after 10 straight minutes of continuously channeling chakra into her enden. Sweat was already dropping like water from her forehead and her tiny frame, and she knew she did not have much more to burn. Mizuki, on the other hand, while also tiring, was not as bad as his young opponent. He pressed his advantage when he saw Naruko's chakra was not as strong as before, channeling more into his Gukakyu as it began to overpower the enden. The uphill battle was taking its toll on Naruko. Her chakra was almost depleted and her vision began to blur as she fought to maintain her enden against her opponent's Gokakyu. Mizuki was getting frustrated at the young girl's persistence in holding the enden. He pushed more chakra into the Gokakyu, pressuring Naruko as she tried her best to hold back the incoming inferno. It was at this moment, Iruka recovered from his back injury enough to manage to toss a kunai towards the concentrating Mizuki. He dispelled the Gokakyu to block it, and Naruko seized this opportunity and pushed every last bit of chakra she could spare into her enden, and the inferno suddenly flew towards Mizuki at undodgeable speeds, completely engulfing him in flames. When the flames died down, only ashes remained, and the melted remains of what was once a Konoha headband. Naruko, now seeing her opponent defeated, passed out from exhaustion. The end of the flashback. Kakashi has just about beaten Sakura to the ground. Who knew a simple genjutsu could have taken her out like a burned bulb? Sasuke, the Rookie of the Year, was nowhere in sight as Naruto scanned the battlegrounds. Kakashi was reading his orange entertainment book as he was waiting for a move from the three genin. Naruto was hiding in a tree, not moving much since the test started 45 minutes ago. As soon as Sasuke attacked, Naruto moved. Sasuke fought off Kakashi as he portrayed his skills from taijutsu to ninjutsu in the form of a Gokakyu. Kakashi dove underground to avoid the fireball. Naruto used the opportunity to quickly rush in and grab Sakura from the ground, Making a beeline for the trees, he placed her unconscious body on a tree branch and proceeded to pinch her nose and cover her mouth. The lack of oxygen forced Sakura awake, but before she could scream, Naruto clamped her mouth shut with his hand. He placed his hand on his lips, telling her to be silent. Sakura nodded and Naruto released his hand. He said, "Sasuke is in trouble, don't move." Sakura firmly whispered, "We have to go help him," and Naruto nodded. "I'll save him," Naruto said, "but we can't take down this man by ourselves. He is much too strong for 3 academy graduates, let alone a Chunin." Sakura was drawn to this, and as she examined the battlefield, her thoughts started to race. Something is wrong, she thought. It feels like I am missing something important. It's right in front of me, smacking me hard, but I just can't see it. Kakashi was overpowering Sasuke in taijutsu when Naruto, who had already finished his seals and launched an attack, leapt out of the tree and caught him off guard. Kaden. Enden. Kakashi's eyes widened as the fireball burned alarmingly close to him. He jumped back to keep from turning to ash, and Naruto used this opportunity to seize Sasuke by the neck before vanishing into the trees. The three were enmeshed in a brief, contentious argument back in the trees. "Give me up," Sasuke demanded, and Naruto struggled to quiet him. Sakura tried to calm him down, but it didn't work, so she finally snapped and gave Sasuke and Naruto a bonk on the head, which solved the problem. "Cease," strongly, she whispered. "You two." After the boys had both calmed down, Sakura started to gently explain. "I have figured out the trick behind the test, thanks to Naruto's hint," Sakura said. His words were, "I never gave you a hint. Recall your statement that you couldn't defeat this man by yourself?" she inquired. Naruto's eyes grew wide, and he grinned. Sasuke realized and grinned. "Guys, you only have 5 minutes left to the time," Kakashi said to no one in particular as he read his book worry-free. Immediately after saying that, he turned to see a swinging log, and his instinct told him to jump, which was the right thing to do because Sakura was just inches from the bells strapped at his waist. The kunai sank into Kakashi's flesh moments later, but it turned into a log. Sakura dodged as Kakashi tried to grapple her from behind. Rolling to safety and grinning, Kakashi dodged backwards as Naruto suddenly exploded out of the ground, hands outstretched as he tried to grab the bells from below. "Tish, so close," she said as she landed. "Sasuke. Right now," Naruto yelled, and Kakashi felt something behind him and ducked to his left as the fireball passed by. Sakura then lunged for Kakashi's body, and he managed to grab his foot, which surprised him a little. Naruto used this moment to catch him in a full Nelson grapple from behind, running his hands below his arms and circling to his neck before securing it in a grapple. He then scissored his legs around Kakashi's waist, which effectively immobilized 3 of his 4 limbs. Sasuke then made a frantic run for the bells, but Kakashi moved his body out of his reach with his one good leg. Sasuke stretched his hand, but just as he appeared to have succeeded in grabbing the bells, he missed and fell to the ground. When the alarm went off, the 3 of them stared at the clock in shock and thought, "We failed." Dejectedly, Sakura and Naruto let go of the older man and fell to the ground. The words, "We failed," said Sakura. Naruto said, "I'm sorry, Sasuke." Sakura, adding, "We were so close." Sasuke sat down next to his teammates and said, "It isn't your fault, Blondie. We may not have passed today, but for the first time in my life, I know how to trust in friends again." The 3 preteens grinned as Kakashi's cough brought them back to the present, and they were delighted by what he said next. "You passed." When Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke realized they were officially ninjas, they leapt with delight. "I was surprised to see your chemistry together," Kakashi stated. "You 3 have the makings of great shinobi." The 3 ninjas grinned with pride as they stood side by side. "Now, children, keep in mind my advice," Kakashi said, gesturing for them to pay attention. "In life, we strive to accomplish all of our objectives. Even the tallest mountains cannot stop you if you set your mind to it, even though it might be frustrating at first." All 3 of the recently hired ninjas gave a nod. Kakashi waved his hand casually and said, "Dismissed," and the 3 of them went off to celebrate the joyous occasion. As he reflected on his new students, he realized that although they worked well together, there were still certain aspects that needed improvement, and improvement must begin with the individual. Kakashi recalled the day before, when they were introducing themselves. "Rewind," Kakashi said in a bored voice. "All right, kids, introduce yourselves." "Sensei," Sakura said, holding up her hand, "could you show once?" "Hitaki Kakashi is my name," sighed Kakashi. "There are things I like and things I don't like. My dreams are limited to what I know. It's your turn." Only his name came out of all that, and the 3 of them perspired. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto," the blonde ninja introduced himself. "I enjoy ramen and spending time with my loved ones, I don't like it when people misuse their abilities for their own self-interest and greed. Being strong enough to defend everyone I care about is my dream. Sakura said, My name is Haruno Sakura. I enjoy reading books and going on dates with Sasuke-kun. I don't like perverts. Becoming a strong kunoichi and, if feasible, Mrs. Uchiha is my dream. Sakura uttered the final sentence with a hint of shame. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. The boy with the raven hair introduced himself. I have a lot of dislikes and few likes. I have two dreams. I want to get revenge and I want to know why my brother killed my clan. The second is to bring my clan back to life. End of flashback. Kakashi let out a sigh. He muttered, It's going to be a long, painful road, while gazing up at the sky. As Iruka walked through the streets of Konoha's bazaar, which was packed with people who came to buy the goods on sale, the bazaar came alive every weekend, brimming with both local and foreign merchants. Iruka reflected on what had happened following the terrible battle with Mizuki, when Naruto was actually a girl named Naruko, not Naruto. Rewind. Iruka did his best to get to his feet, but something must have been pressed against his nerves or something severed, because he had very little feeling in his left foot and right arm, almost as if they were non-existent. Nevertheless, he managed to stand, pressing his weight on his right leg while using a huge tree branch in his left as a crutch, and he walked slowly and unsteadily to where Naruko was. Iruka touched her forehead with the back of his palm and scowled because it was warm. Naruko had used too much chakra in the battle and was experiencing minor chakra withdrawal. She had chakra burns on both her palms and parts of her face from the extensive use of the Kaiden Jutsu. She was passed out from chakra exhaustion, and her breathing was ragged and rapid. Since this was a sensitive matter involving an S-class Secreta, the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, Iruka carried her in his good hand, tucked under his arms as he struggled to keep from fainting from the bleeding wound on his back. He then proceeded to the Hokage's office. It would be an understatement to say that the Hokage was anxious. He was pacing his office from side to side, waiting for the ninjas he had sent out to report in, but no one had done so for a long time. As the young woman attempted to stop Iruka from entering, he rushed in and swung his crutch menacingly at the Hokage's assistant. Hokage-sama, I have the forbidden scroll with me, he cried. The old man told his assistant to leave us, and the woman nodded before leaving the room quickly, but not before glaring at Iruka and slamming the door behind her. As he released Naruko from his grasp, he said, Hokage-sama, and the Hokage took her right away, setting her down on the couch. The old man said, Oh, I am so going to regret this, and pulled out a scroll, which he opened to reveal the kanji for man in the middle, encircled by two half-drawn semicircles and numerous other seals and incantations. Kachiyose no Jutsu, wearing a white lab coat and a black kimono, a middle-aged woman entered the room, glanced at the office, then turned to the Hokage and gave him a glare. If I had been nude, how would you have responded? Both men turned red and turned their heads away from the doctor as he reprimanded them. I am aware that possibility exists, the Hokage replied. I would not have risked summoning you if it was not important. Eboshi turned to the couch where Naruko lay unconscious, her hands glowing green as she gradually healed her wounds. Eboshi-sama, Iruka said, grabbing both of their attention. About Naruto's condition, he left the sentence hanging. Chakra exhaustion, she said, and how did she get it? As he recalled the battle, Iruka started, well, Mizuki had tricked her into stealing the scroll for him, adding, they fought because Naruto wouldn't give it to her once she found out in an attempt to buy her some time to run. I also tried to get in the way, but I was quickly defeated after fighting Mizuki. Naruto used a Kaiden Jutsu to kill him. Eboshi wrote, it still doesn't answer why she used up all her chakra, with her brows knitted. Well, Mizuki cast Gokakyu to fight at the same moment that Naruto cast the Enden. They remained motionless for a long time. After a while, Mizuki lost focus, which gave Naruto the chance to use all of her chakra in the technique, killing her, Iruka explained. It would be a huge understatement to say that the woman was angry. Are both of you insane? She pointed a finger at Iruka and yelled at the top of her lungs. Why did you not stop them? You are both very fortunate that there was no massive fireball explosion brought on by the collection. The Hokage smoked his wooden pipe in silence, something he did not anticipate from his ninjas. Tell me exactly what happened, Sarutobi ordered sternly, and Iruka nodded and began to tell the story while Eboshi worked on Naruko's injuries. She examined the young blonde girl in front of her and determined that while the burns on her palms and around her face were minor issues that could be easily healed by a skilled medic like herself or Tsunade, the exhaustion of chakras was a problem that would take weeks to heal for a normal person. As a result, soldier pills were created. Eboshi started, Iruka, and Iruka stopped in the middle of her sentence to look at her. Then, she appeared in front of him, her hands lightly choking him. If you ever tell anyone that Naruto is a girl, she said, tightening her grip on the young Chunin's neck to make her point, and Iruka simply nodded. He turned to face the Hokage, who said, "Iruka, you both had a difficult day. Iruka, keep this a secret and go sleep." After giving a nod, Iruka headed to the hospital. End of flashback. The Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi, sighed as Iboshi worked on Naruko in his office. Naruko was unable to go to the hospital because of the negative reaction people would have to the Jinchuriki in a public hospital where patients are treated. There would be a huge commotion, and by God, nothing good would come of it. "Tell me, how is she faring?" Sarutobi called, and the doctor merely hummed in recognition. Using his name to convey her frustration, she said sharply, "I am telling you, Sarutobi," adding that she was fortunate to be alive to get her chakra going. "I gave her some soldier pills and an unexpected chakra injection into her 7 gates. However, it was already too close. If it occurs again, an ordinary physician would have given up." Sarutobi let out a sigh of relief and nodded. "However, if it happens again..." Iboshi ended the sentence because it was clear, "Sandaime, I can't always be there even though I'd like to be." Sandaime let out another sigh, the second in a short period of time. Life was not as simple for him as it had been in his youth. Iboshi called out, "Say, Sandaime," and the older man gave her his whole attention. Was it really a good idea to keep Naruko's memories and power hidden? "You know it needed to be done," Sandaime said, looking down at the ground while puffing on his pipe. "I am no longer able to murder Orochimaru. Orochimaru also desires power. Although present in Yamato, the Shoden's power was never as great as Hiroshima's. The DNA that Orochimaru implanted in Naruko, however, has fully fused with her own due to what is inside of her, making it on par with Hiroshima. It's possible that she is her great-granddaughter. Wouldn't Orochimaru want that authority? The power that defeated Uchiha Madara," Iboshi said. The ensuing silence, in which the Hokage and the physician could only gaze at one another, spoke for thousands. Iboshi forewarned, "One day, Saitame, she would open the seal whether it was intended or not. After that, her memories will come back." "I pray with all my heart and soul that day will never come," Sandaime stated. Fortunately, the slash he received missed his spine by 2 inches. Otherwise, he would have been crippled in some way. Iruka placed his hand on his torso. Feeling the bandages through his blue shirt, his back hurt more than his abdomen. He was reminded of the time of day by his rumbling stomach, so his legs automatically moved to one of his favorite restaurants, the Ichiraku ramen stand in the middle of the bazaar. Since he was already there, it was easy, but his thoughts kept going back to his disguised student, and he couldn't stop thinking about Hera. Not in a sexual way. He sat down at one of the chairs and ordered his usual dish, chashu ramen, and as he started to eat the delectable noodles, his mood improved and he gradually forgot about his former pupil. A voice said softly, "Iruka-sensei," and Iruka looked up from his bowl of ramen and turned to face the source of the sound. He was met by a clear cerulean blue eye and blonde spiky hair. "Naruto," Iruka said, "I take it you'd like to discuss the fight?" The boy nodded in agreement with his query, and Iruka gestured for him to take a seat next to him, which he did. "I wanted to clear the air with you, Iruka-sensei," Naruto said as the waitress took his order. "I kept some things from the world from all of you." "I saw the Genjutsu Kai, Naruto," Iruka stated. "I know what you are." Naruto said, "You know what happened to me, Iruka-sensei. People can't know who I really am. It was not intended for you to know either." "Not everyone despises you," Iruka said, flinching. Naruto said, his voice trembling a little, "It is difficult to tell who is who, especially if most of the time people attack me." "Iruka-sensei, can you take the chance? If you were in my shoes, would you dare to tell people you're a girl?" he said, holding his teacup tightly. "I don't want to consider the worst-case scenario." Iruka could only nod. "Oh, it would certainly not end well. It would be foolish to risk telling people that the Jinchuriki is a girl, especially when the wounds from the night of the Kyuubi attack are still so fresh." Iruka looked at the blonde boy next to him and said, "I meant what I said at the forest. You know, you were its jailer, and the closest thing in the universe right now to the Kyuubi, but you are not him." "I know," Naruto replied. "Iruka-sensei, I knew you meant it. I dropped the illusion for that reason." A good day indeed, as the two ninjas grinned at one another before savoring the ramen and each other's quiet companionship. While in bed that night, Naruko kept turning and tossing. She had no idea why, but her heart was beating rapidly and loudly. Sweat was all over her body, soaking the blankets and the sheets. Her breathing was labored and hushed. She felt as though something big was about to happen. Something large, as she could feel it in her bones. Something massive was about to hit her, but she had no idea what it was. It felt so close, so very close. It was a familiar feeling, somehow, but she couldn't recall what the hell it was. Over a radio broadcast, a voice said, "Hot blonde reporting in, I'm in position, over." Over the same radio broadcast, a different voice said, "Sexy Pink reporting in," adding, "I'm in position 2, over." Awkward Raven, reporting in, a third individual said, "Seriously, guys, I am picking the codenames next time." A slack voice said, "In position, target located, get ready to move in." The four prepared their bodies for action. Right now, the four of them immediately leapt, their hands extended, as the slack-jawed voice ordered. Shortly afterward, Naruto and his companions were grappling on the ground with a very large cat that appeared to be doing everything in her power to get away. She scratched the three rookies and wildly swung her claws in an attempt to get away from the 6 hands that were struggling to hold her. They wrestled on the ground for several minutes, kicking out a cloud of dust, and finally managed to tie the cat with ninja wire and hold it by its limbs. Kakashi grinned under his mask as he glanced at the 3 ninjas beneath him. The cat was on the ground, lying on its sides, with ninja wires binding all 4 limbs together. Even then, it was hissing and meowing, growling as much as it could as it struggled to break free from its bonds. The 3 rookie ninjas slumped to the ground in a weary heap, their faces and hands covered in scratches, cat hair, cat pee, and cat saliva. It was clearly not a good day for them. As the cat struggled for air, crushed under the fat, flabby, but somehow strong arms of its owner, the fire daimyo's wife, Naruto and his friends watched with a wicked smirk on their faces. The 3 ninjas felt a wonderful sensation inside their chests as the cat struggled for air. The 3 scratched up Genin thought, "Suffer, insolent animal, suffer as you have made us suffer." Behind his table, Sandame unrolled the scroll containing D-ranked missions and declared, "Now that you have successfully completed the mission, I shall have another one for you immediately. Gigi, if you dare give us any more missions from that bloody scroll, I will find all your entertainment books and burn them to ashes so fast you wouldn't have time to even move," said Naruto. Naruto. When Iruka yelled, the lecture started. Naruto's eyes went blurry and his mind started to wander as he heard Iruka discuss the ranks of missions and the ninjas needed to safely finish them. His voice was now a distant, hazy sound as he lost awareness of the outside world. Da bum. He heard a sound. Da bum. It was like a heartbeat. Then, all of a sudden, he was in a room with pipes, and the only sound in the room was the sound of water dripping from them. Naruto looked at his hands, which were feminine, and she touched her long hair with 2 pigtails. She panicked as she looked around, and she sighed in relief because it seemed like no one else was there. But then she saw a tree, and she was shocked to see that it was enormous, really huge, and seemed to last forever. Its trunk alone was so large that it took a good 30 seconds to walk around it, and its spread was so wide that it looked like a giant worldly umbrella. In the middle of the trunk was a huge piece of paper with the kanji for seal on it. Da bum. The sound of a heartbeat drew her attention once more, and she turned to face the tree. She could feel it, but not fully. The tree had a familiar feel to it, that feeling she seemed to get all the time but couldn't quite identify. It was as if it were a part of her, yet it also felt so disconnected from her. It was so perplexing, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Suddenly, Naruto was back in the mission room, and although his breathing had accelerated, he was able to control it so that those around him were unaware of it. "So, this is the group you put me on?" When Naruto heard a voice grumbling, he looked up to see an elderly man who was obviously intoxicated and holding a bottle of sake. "Doesn't seem like much, especially the short blonde boy," Naruto said. Naruto said sharply, "Old man, I can fight better drunk than you can walk sober." Now, Naruto, scolded Kakashi. "He's our client, we must be kind to him." "What is the mission?" Naruto asked, ignoring Kakashi. Iruka rubbed his temples and remarked, "Your mission is to keep this man safe until he finishes building the bridge that connects the wave country to the mainland." "Really? You're providing me with a group of children as protection?" Tazuna complained. Naruto gave the elderly man his most intense glare and opened his mouth to speak, but Kakashi deftly cut him off. "Don't worry so much," Kakashi advised, adding that although my students are young, they are not helpless. In addition, I am one of the village's elite ninjas. We'll be secure. The group left with Tazuna, and the Hokage sighed, wishing he didn't have to deal with it. God, he was exhausted. He closed his eyes and leaned back in his chair, letting his mind wander away from the blonde in disguise and all of her secrets. Naruto and his companions strolled peacefully in the direction of the wave country, arranged in a loose formation around Tazuna, with Naruto in the rear, Sasuke and Sakura to his left and right, and Kakashi in front. Kakashi silently observed the eerie silence that enveloped them like a blanket. There was no sound of the wind or birds, and there were no animals in the area. Despite this, Naruto's eyes betrayed his deep thoughts, as he managed to walk at a steady pace to keep up with the others. Sakura was secretly staring at Sasuke, her cheeks flushed, Her lips slightly parted, and she bit her index finger gently, her eyes never leaving the target's body. Sasuke, on the other hand, was casually ignoring the pink-haired ninja who was staring at him, and he attempted to concentrate on the task at hand. It seems like this mission was going to be extremely difficult. Kakashi sighed. He had a gut instinct that told him that this mission would change his team's lives. The silence was broken abruptly by the sound of metal chains, followed by the tearing of Kakashi in front of them, with blood splattering all around, Sakura screaming, and Tazuna falling to his knees. The attackers yelled, "One down, 3 to go," and chains started to appear around Naruto, who appeared to be doing nothing as his death approached. Almost instantly, Sasuke jumped into action, kicking one of the 2 attackers in the face and sending the attacker flying away with a loud clang against the metal mask he was wearing. The other attacker then proceeded to wrap his chain around Naruto, pulling it with a sudden snap as the spiked chain dug into his mortal flesh. The attacker pulled harder, and Naruto burst into pieces, suffering the same fate Kakashi had just moments before. 2 down, 2 to go. Sasuke fought the 2 attackers, retreated a few steps to put distance between himself and the enemy, armed himself with a kunai, and dodged backwards as the other one tried to swipe his feet from underneath. Sakura caught her senses and took a protective stance in front of Tazuna, who was essentially flung from his mouth at his point. Sasuke looked closely at his enemies, who were nearly identical, resembling twins in appearance, height, long, straight black hair, facial features, and even body build. They both wore kiri headbands, and the gauntlets on their hands, one on the left and one on the right, were retractable, allowing them to use them as whips or as painful cowboy ropes. Of course, if they used the gauntlets as a rope and pulled hard enough, it would shred the person into minced meat, like Kakashi and Naruto. They charged in with their gauntlets ready, and then Sakura appeared at his side, armed and prepared to fight. The 2 attackers leapt and let go of their chains, and Sakura and Sasuke ducked as the chain hit the ground a few seconds later. They snapped it free from their gauntlets, and Sasuke tried a roundhouse kick at them, but they ducked under it. Sakura took advantage of the situation, squatting swiftly, putting her hands on the ground to support her weight, and pushing both of her legs out in a drop kick motion, which caught the Kiri ninjas in the face and sent them flying straight into Kakashi and Naruto's arms, where they were immediately restrained. "Hello, guys," Kakashi said casually, and Naruto waved while watching the recently captured inmates for any escape attempts. Sakura glanced at them and at the area where they had been slashed, which was covered in chopped logs. "Sensei, you pretended to die, but why?" Sakura asked acerbically. Kakashi started to say, "Wella," but Sakura's glare persuaded him to stop. "I wanted to compare their skills to yours to see what we were up against. I also wanted to see how you guys were doing as a team." "What about Naruto?" Sakura glared at her blonde teammate as she said this. Naruto responded sheepishly, "I was actually dozing off until the very last second, and I barely made it out in time. I then made the decision to watch the program." At this point, Sakura was essentially furious and rushed at the blonde, catching him in a powerful sleeper hold grapple while Naruto pleaded with her to let him go, even mimicking a wrestler's tap out. The captured ninjas were Kakashi's next focus. "I need to send a message to Konoha," Kakashi said. "They will send a team to bring these prisoners in." When Naruto finally managed to free himself from Sakura's death grip, he gulped down the free air. "Tazuna-san," he called, "you lied to us." Kakashi's smile was very charming. Tazuna felt sick from the sweetness of it. "My team signed up for a C-ranked mission. Ninjas shouldn't be attacking us, especially them." Sakura and Naruto both said, "Who?" At the same time. In response, Kakashi gestured to their recently acquired inmates. "The Demon Brothers B-class missing ninjas from Kiri village," said Kakashi. He looked over at Tazuna. "The truth, now." Tazuna merely sighed. "The town is broke. We've been squeezed dry by a man named Gato." To everyone's surprise, Naruto said, "Ah, the mercenary tycoon." He was a little irritated by their strange looks. "I know things, damn it. He controls all the waterways, which we used for trading previously. His goons stop us from trading with the outside world. We are building a bridge that will link us to the outside world again. We were finally going to lose that bastard," Tazuna said. Kakashi remarked, "But a powerful man like him has resources." Naruto said, "Mercenaries and missing ninjas." In closing, when Kakashi declared, "My team is not equipped to fight missing ninjas. This is an A-ranked mission, given the potential of ninjas that could appear, given the present situation." Naruto questioned, "Not well equipped? We are as equipped as any team in Konoha." Sakura backed Naruto and said, "Sensei, Naruto's right. We must complete this mission no matter what." Sasuke gave a nod. Kakashi let out a sigh. "We might die on this mission," Kakashi cautioned. Naruto said, "Then so be it." With a resolute expression, Sakura put a hand on his shoulder and grinned. Sasuke put his hands in his pockets and merely grinned. Kakashi said, "Well, it seems we have a date with death," as he started to leave Konoha. With a sigh, Sasuke set Kakashi down next to Naruto in the ready-made futon. Sakura settled down next to Naruto and looked at the blood-stained bandages covering his upper body. With a sigh of relief, Sasuke took a seat next to Sakura and closed his eyes while reflecting on what had transpired. Kakashi wasn't kidding when he claimed that they had a date with death. Everything appeared to settle down after the confrontation with the first twin attackers, known as the Demon Brothers, but a few hours later, they seemed to be confronted by another assassin, and he was something else. Boy. Rewind. In order to finish the crucial bridge, Naruto and his group escorted the client back to his hometown while maintaining the same loose formation. A mist seemed to gather unnaturally quickly as they moved when a deep whirling sound was heard. They paid no attention to it. "Duck!" exclaimed Kakashi. The boys ducked just in time as something huge and metallic whirled past their heads, narrowly missing them, but the reaction was immediate as Sakura tackled Tazuna to the ground. "Who? I see why the Demon Brothers have failed," a gruff voice whooshed out of the fog. "Sharingan Kakashi, the man who knows over 1,000 jutsus. It seems I will be entertained." Kakashi gave the order, "Protect the client at all costs." The team instantly centered on Tazuna, with each member covering him in a diamond shape with their backs against his body with their hands clenched in a defensive position. Each member faced outward. The mist echoed with a mad laugh. "Do you know my nickname, Inkiri?" With a warning, "Be careful, guys," Kakashi said. "He is not someone to trifle with." It echoed, "They call me the Silent Killer, because people don't see me until their deaths because I can kill people so quietly." Something touched Kakashi's shoulder. There was nothing there when he swiped his kunai in that direction. The voice went on, "There is nothing you people can do to stop me." Naruto was suddenly confronted by a face. Only his eyes were visible because it was partially wrapped in bandages. Naruto's soul was pierced by those lifeless, icy eyes that pierced both flesh and bone. It was eerie. Naruto made a move to strike the face, but it vanished as his fist was ready to strike. "Enough taunting," sneered Kakashi. "Show yourself, Momochi Zabuza." A wild laugh reverberated throughout the room. The fog blew away. In front of the team was a man. He had no shirt on, but there were bandages on some areas of his torso. He swung the heavy Zanpakuto with ease, his muscular arms supporting it. He was dressed in ninja sandals and torn camouflage pants. "So you do know me," said the man, who was later identified as Zabuza. According to Kakashi, Momochi Zabuza, a class missing ninja from Kirigakure, you escaped after the failed attempt to assassinate the Mizuki. "And you are the famous Sharingan Kakashi," Zabuza answered, "nicknamed Copycat Kakashi because of your Sharingan. You possess over 1,000 ninja techniques." "Listen to me, guys," said Kakashi. "This man is out of your league. Just hold your positions and be careful." Zabuza yelled, "Let's dance," as he rushed Kakashi and his group. In response, Kakashi charged forward and engaged Zabuza in a metal-on-metal collision. Naruto observed the fight between Zabuza and Kakashi as both elite ninjas fought fiercely for control. The battle appeared to be at a standstill. His ears suddenly rang with a wild laugh. He looked around and saw that none of his teammates had heard it. "So you are the insolent whelp that I am imprisoned to," a savage voice echoed in his mind. He made a concerted effort to focus his eyes, but his head seemed to spin. He breathed rapidly, and in short spurts Naruto collapsed to the ground. Calling out to him and asking if he was okay, Sakura rushed to his side. But he was distracted. Her voice was muffled. As he struggled to control his breathing, all he could hear was the feral voice taunting him and his own heartbeat. His navy tee was smeared with sweat. He was suffocated. He was startled out of his reverie by a loud scream. Sasuke flew to a tree as he turned. When Naruto looked for Kakashi, he discovered him trapped in a water bubble. Two Zabuzas were present. One was fighting his team, and the other was holding the method for trapping his sensei. Sakura rushed to assist Sasuke in standing up. Given that it left their client Tazuna totally open to attacks, it seemed like a serious error. Without hesitation, Zabuza leapt to his feet and swung his massive sword, which resembled a cleaver, down on the poor old man. Swiftly, Naruto emerged between Tazuna and the blade. He faced Zabuza with both palms in his hands. Harayuheki. The blade was essentially stopped when a wall materialized between him and it. Zabuza studied the partition. He could see from his observation that the barrier originated in Naruto's hands because the wall was formed by the outward expansion of water ripples. After recovering from Zabuza's earlier attack, Sasuke used this opportunity to grab Tazuna by the back of his collar and yank him back as Zabuza's second blow broke the barrier Naruto had put up. Naruto sidestepped the slash to avoid it. Sakura tried to roundhouse kick Zabuza in the chest, but he caught it with ease. He raised her into the air and threw her in Sasuke's direction, who caught her. The force of the toss caused him to skid back a few feet. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Zabuza was encircled by hundreds of Narutos. They immediately launched an assault, charging at the perilous assassin, taking Sakura and Tazuna by the waists. The real Naruto fled the scene, Sasuke trailing closely behind. Sakura yelled, "Naruto, what are you doing? We have to save Kakashi-sensei." "Not without a plan," replying Naruto. Then he smiled evilly. Sakura was quite familiar with that smile. It indicated that he had a plan. Sasuke grinned. "I knew this would be fantastic." The remaining clones were already being destroyed by Zabuza. He waited. After decapitating the final pathetic clone, he was aware that they would return after all. It was Konoha's custom to keep one of their own. A fireball that was aimed straight at him emerged from the woods, fulfilling his prophecy. Leaping back, he swatted the fireball like a fly emerging from the bush. Naruto and his group charged in Zabuza's direction. He raised his legs, so Sakura's attempt to sweep his feet from under him was essentially ineffective. Before the kick could make contact, Zabuza punched Sasuke in the face after he tried a roundhouse to his face in a flash. Naruto was behind him, ensnaring him in a full Nelson grapple. Sasuke reached into his backpack and pulled out something. He held it in his hand and unraveled it. "Fuma Shuriken," he declared, making a show of spinning the blade in his hands. Then he leapt to his feet and dropped his weapon. He saw himself cutting through the air, moving towards Zabuza. Zabuza prepared for the weapon and powered out of Naruto's grapple, but it spun past him. "Who, going for the real me? I see," said the Zabuza, who was using the Suiru no Jutsu to hold Kakashi captive. Unable to move, Zabuza dodged as the weapon spun past beneath him. By raising his legs into the air, Sakura grinned. "It was, now," she cried. Sasuke and Naruto, who were already rushing through their hand seals, were suddenly changed into the weapons. They released their jutsus simultaneously after finishing. Kaden. Enden. Kaden. Gokakyu. Together, a fireball and a stream of flames raced in Zabuza's direction. All he could do was watch as the flames drew closer and closer at incredible rates. As he avoided the approaching double inferno and let go of the technique that had imprisoned Kakashi, he swore. When Naruto and Sasuke saw their plan come to pass, they exhaled with relief. Kakashi had no restrictions. It turned out to be a serious error, though, as Zabuza quickly emerged behind both boys and kicked Sasuke so hard that he flew all the way to Sakura, who intervened by leaning against a tree and serving as a cushion for Sasuke. But Naruto wasn't so fortunate. Zabuza pierced Naruto's back with his Demon Slayer sword, then exited through the front with the blade piercing his lungs and possibly his heart. Naruto coughed up blood as he gasped for air. When he looked down, he saw a blade protruding from a punctured chest. He examined his hands. They were female. She rubbed her hair. It was styled into two high pigtails and was long. The illusion vanished. She reflected, "I'm going to die." Zabuza quickly withdrew the blade from her small body, and she winced in agony. He brought the dying blonde up to eye level by holding her by the collar of her t-shirt. Zabuza mockingly asked, "How does it feel, brat, to know that you are dying?" As more blood spurted from her mouth and wound, Naruko was only able to cough a little. Sakura cried out, "Naruto!" As she saw her teammate die, the dying blonde was dropped by Zabuza. Zabuza kicked her hard in the abdomen just before she hit the ground, sending her hurtling through the air. She fell to the ground, motionless, and slammed into a tree. The expanding pool of blood was the only thing that moved around her. Sakura surveyed her environment. Naruko was dying, and Zabuza had kicked Sasuke so hard that he was unconscious. Without wasting any time, Zabuza combed through a complicated set of seals. Suiden. Suiryuden. Out of nowhere, a water dragon rushed in the direction of Sakura and her group. Shutting her eyes, she prepared for the blow. The sound of Kakashi's voice filled her heart with hope. Suiden. Suiryuden. In midair, Zabuza's dragon encountered another water dragon. Each method neutralized the other. Kakashi let out a worried bark. "Sakura, help Naruto. Hurry!" Immediately getting to her feet, the pink-haired Kunoichi hurried over to join the blonde. In order to expose Naruko's growing chest and a sizable bloody wound on her right side, she tore up her bloodied shirt and took off her broken sports bra. Sakura hastily pulled out a first aid kit and started to treat the wounds. She immediately poured a common medical powder over the open wound, which effectively stopped the bleeding. She applied pressure to the wound by placing a sterile cloth over it. Around her, She could hear the sounds of battle. They weren't being reserved. She and Naruko were almost struck by some of the jutsus that were flung everywhere. She quickly covered Naruko's torso with bandages. She then managed to force a soldier pill down Naruko's throat. She reached into her backpack and took out a simple t-shirt. After assisting the unconscious blonde in donning it, she put her in a secure location, out of sight behind a tree. Sakura summoned Sasuke's voice. He was at her side. Sakura said, "Alive, but barely." In response, "We need to leave now." Sasuke remarked, "Take him and Tazuna away, I'll help Kakashi." He then left to support his sensei in his fight against his adversary. Sakura called out, "Tazuna-san," attracting the man's attention, "We have to leave now." Tazuna nodded stupidly. Sakura seized Naruko and fled the scene, with Tazuna trailing behind. "Hurry," said Sakura. They increased their speed in an effort to get as far away from the conflict as they could. After running for 15 minutes, Tazuna yelled for her to stop. He was exhausted. He was unable to run any farther. Sakura gently set Naruko down. "Wait here," she commanded. "I will secure the immediate area." Sakura took off, carrying not only the equipment already in her kit but also a bundle wire and explosive tags. Tazuna let out a sigh. It had been a long day. It was all so bloody and hazy. It was really perplexing. It was time for him to have some sake. After a while, Sakura came back with Kakashi and Sasuke, with Sakura and Sasuke bearing his weight on their shoulders. Kakashi was essentially unconscious. "We have to leave now," Sasuke declared. "They need rest." Tazuna gave a nod. Tazuna inquired, "Where is he?" When Sasuke said, "Zabuza is defeated," the end of the flashback. Naruko was in water up to her ankles. Her surroundings were extremely cramped, damp, and dark. She ran her hand over the pipes lining the hallway walls. Water trickled down her hands, and it was chilly and damp. Her feet scampered against the water's flow as she moved slowly forward. Naruko took a close look at her surroundings. The entire length of the walls was lined with pipes. Unusual angles were used to twist and turn the pipes. Naruko paid close attention to the twists and turns. They resemble human blood vessels almost exactly. "Come closer." Someone said. It was difficult for Naruko to identify the location because it reverberated through the hallways and tunnels. Nevertheless, her legs moved on their own as she moved forward. Suddenly, a bright light burst into her field of vision. As she turned at a corner to the right, she protected the light from her eyes. A rough, savage voice said, "I see that you have made it." Right in front of her, setting her hand aside, she gazed directly ahead. "Seal" was written in kanji on a paper that appeared to be holding the massive cage in place. Giant white fangs followed by large red eyes emerged from the opposite side of the cage. Naruko had a vague notion of the creature's size when he heard footsteps rumbling from inside the cage. "I know who you are," Naruko said without hesitation. She reasoned that there was no use in being afraid. The seal wouldn't break now. It has held for 12 years. "I can see that you do," said the enormous fox. "It's the first time meeting you on the brink of death, and finally we meet." She asked, a little irritated with the fox, "What do you want?" The fox growled, "Want? I want my freedom. I want to put you between my jaws, and crush you like the insolent insect that you are. I want to devour the bloody man who placed me inside here for 12 years. The entire room trembled as Kyuubi struck the cage with his enormous paw. Naruko stumbled to the ground after losing her footing. Kyuubi roared, "One day, I will escape from this hellhole, and you will be the first one to feel my wrath." Murmuring to herself, "I can see why people hate me now," Naruko said. She raised her head, her eyes blazing with a chilly rage that would have sent a normal person shuddering. "You are the reason my life is like this." Naruko growled, flashing her somewhat savage teeth. "I will never let you escape. As long as I am alive, you will not have your freedom." Kyuubi let out a roar. Naruko went on, "And when I die, I am taking you to the grave with me." Kyuubi shook the room violently as he pounded the bars in a fit of rage. Kyuubi snarled, "You think you can threaten me? The strongest ninja in the world couldn't kill me. The strongest Hokage in history couldn't kill me, even after he had the aid of the death god himself." "True," said Naruko. Kyuubi appeared arrogant, "but you are currently trapped. I intend to make sure you stay that way." Kyuubi backed off, retreating deeper into his cage. "Leave, you ruin my mood." Naruko started to walk away but was stopped. "I have a question." The enormous red fox was drawn to this. He thought this was something new. She questioned, "How did you bring me here?" "I did not," was his response. "You came because it was time for us to meet." Her voice was full of acid as she asked, "Why in the world would I want to meet you?" The room echoed with Kyuubi's laugh. "Have you not realized that I have kept you alive numerous times, when you were staring in the face of death?" he said. Naruko scowled and he said, "The seal has tied both of our fates together. That means, if you die, I die, and trust me, I have no intention of dying anytime soon." Naruko thought about what he had said. He said, "You, child," while he walked around his cage. "I can feel something is wrong with you. It's like something is missing." Her eyes grew wide. He understood her emotions. There was always something wrong. She seemed to be lacking something, as if a piece of her soul had vanished. It felt like that, and she always felt like that. Kyuubi chuckled. He said, "This encounter has been quite interesting," and he was proud of himself. "You should treat that wound." Naruko cast a downward glance. She could see her bandaged torso beneath her t-shirt. She recalled the conflict. She nearly died. She had lost her illusion. In that case, her team would have learned who she really was. She started to get anxious. Kyuubi laughed. "I have upheld your illusion after your near-death condition began to stabilize," Kyuubi said, "but I think your female teammates saw your real form." Her face was covered in a puzzled expression. "Keeping you alive is vital to my survival," he clarified. "The less people know about you, the better. You've made that pretty clear in the past." Naruko said, "I won't be grateful," though Kyuubi shot back, "I am just helping myself survive. As much as I like you, once I am out of this hellhole, I will crush you like an insect." "I will kill you," declared Naruko. "Once you escape, I will kill you." "Try me, woman," the Kyuubi mockingly said, filling the room with his wild laughter. Naruko could feel the surroundings blurring and the laughter fading. Sitting upright on his futon in a room, Naruto awoke with a start. He was drenched in sweat. He almost let out a cry as he felt a shock of pain, but he restrained himself. He touched his heavily bandaged, nude torso and looked down. Sakura was kneeling next to him, sleeping, with bloody bandages on one side and a medical kit on the other beside him. Kakashi lay in another futon, motionless and unconscious. There was no sign of Sasuke. With a soft "thank you," Naruto laid a blanket over her and laid her down gently on the futon he was sleeping on. After putting on a shirt, he left the room. He was greeted by a stunning woman wearing an apron and sporting long black hair. She said, "I see you have woken up," and her smile was gentle. "I'm Tsunami, Tazuna's daughter." Naruto said, "Good morning to you. Thank you for extending your hospitality." Tsunami remarked, "It's the least we could do." Something caught Naruto's attention. Out of the corner of his eye it darted farther into the house as he turned to stare at it. "That was my son, Inari," Tsunami told them. "He's been like that ever since his father died." At that moment, Naruto saw the picture on one of the walls that had been patched up. A portion of it was ripped off, but it was shoddily repaired with clear tape. Naruto pointed to the man in the photo and questioned, "Is that him?" Tsunami gave a nod. "How did he die?" "Like a hero, Naruto-san," Tsunami replied piteously. "He tried to stop Gato, but he was killed instead." Naruto remarked, "I am sorry for your loss." "Don't be," replied Tsunami. "Your teammate is with father on the bridge." A drowsy voice said, "Naruto?" Sakura was wiping some sleep from her eyes when Tsunami and Naruto turned to face her. "Can I talk to you privately?" Naruto gave a nod. Naruto and Sakura walked out of the house, saying, "Tsunami-san, if you'll excuse us." The quiet was overwhelming. Sakura clasped her hands together, and Naruto could see that she was a little anxious. She was stiffening. Naruto started by saying, "I know you know, Sakura." The tension between them both decreased as a result. "I was the one who stopped the bleeding when Zabuza stabbed you," Sakura informed him. Naruto gave a nod. In the middle of a forest, they came to a stop beneath a large tree. They were by themselves. "Why, Naruto?" inquired Sakura with his hands sealed. Naruto muttered, "Genjutsu Kai." The blonde clarified, "It's Naruko, by the way." Sakura watched as Naruto's appearance evolved. Long, straight blonde hair tied in two high pigtails replaced the first spiky hairstyle. A narrow feminine chin replaced the masculine angled jawline. Her body changed from being toned and masculine to being slender and seductive. Naruko remarked, "This is the real me." Sakura looked her up and down. She was a lovely young woman. Her jaws were rounded, but her chin was sharp. She had pink lips, a tiny button nose, and big, blue eyes. Her creamy cheeks are lightly streaked with whisker, giving her a cute yet alluring appearance. She had a slim build. Sakura could see that her curves were beginning to take shape, giving her a nice, slender waist and a hip that was the right size. Sakura noticed Naruko's breasts when she looked up. Though not as large as Hinata's, they were unquestionably larger than her. Her long, creamy white legs resembled pearl powder that was constantly being applied to the skin. Overall, she was a stunning girl with a killer body that men will be lusting after in a few years. Sakura was a little envious, but she chose to ignore it. "It's complicated," Sakura told Naruko. "I cannot explain it in a few words, nor it is something that I can explain without the consent of the Hokage." As Sakura put it, "Does Kakashi know?" Naruko gave a headshake. Naruko made the statement, "I can count the people who know with my hands, People who know why I did this are strong people. Sakura, one of them, is Hokage-sama. As Sakura put it, is it that bad? Sakura, if you knew this secret, and word got around, it would endanger your life, said Naruko. Sakura staggered, startled. Sakura, please, pleaded Naruko. Tell no one about this. I was made a ninja for a reason. What do you mean? Inquired Sakura. Her heart was beating fast. She pondered whether it was the thrill of discovering Naruko's secrets or simply witnessing her in her true form. For reasons I cannot disclose, Naruko started as she drew closer to Sakura. I have many enemies. It took Sakura by surprise. Naruko caught her after she stumbled and fell. Enemies, Sakura, that would not hesitate to kill anyone close to me to get their hands on my secret, Naruko said. I won't tell anyone. I saw you, Sakura hesitantly said. Naruko grinned. Naruko softly said, thank you, Sakura, and gave the girl with the pink hair a hug. Let's go back to Tazuna's house. We have to rest. Gato was standing in front of his bed, and Zabuza was sitting up. Gato shouted, you told me you were good. Why isn't the old man dead? Zabuza simply ignored the question without answering. Gato was furious. He rushed to Zabuza's side and was ready to slap him when he felt a firm hold on his arm, which made him scream in agony. A female voice hissed, you are not worthy of touching him. Instead, quiet until then. Gato's guards suddenly came into action. They attempted to capture the individual detaining their boss, but were thwarted when she placed a senbon over Gato's head. Now, Haku, teasingly Zabuza said. We don't want to kill our employer before he pays us. The individual, now known as Haku, let him go. Haku spit out, go before I hack off your arm. With his guards in tow, Gato embraced his arm and fled. Zabuza-sama, Haku said, turning to the killer, your injuries will take a week to fully heal if you drink my medicine every day. Zabuza gave a nod. I want a rematch with Kakashi. When Sakura and Naruto returned, Kakashi had woken up. He was in his futon, sitting up. Sasuke said, we have bad news, as he watched his teammates come in. Sakura and Naruto scowled. They sat when Kakashi motioned them to do so. Kakashi began, remember our good friend Zabuza? Sakura and Naruto both nodded. Well, he's not dead. Sensei, when you say not dead, do you mean comatose not dead or he's coming back to kill us not dead? Asked Naruto. Oh, he's very much alive all right. Kakashi replied without hesitation. I suspect that he will be up and moving fine in about a week or so. Ah crap, swore Naruto. I don't want to get stabbed in the chest again. According to Kakashi, Naruto's injury won't heal in time for the confrontation. He looked at his other two pupils. You two will have to take point. Sakura and Sasuke exchanged a brief look before nodding. Kakashi remarked, Sasuke, you have a nice arsenal of fire techniques. Sakura, however, is not so well versed in that area. Sensei, interrupted Naruto. Kakashi looked at his teammate, who was blonde. I know some simple offensive techniques I could teach her. Kakashi gave nod. He grinned beneath his mask and said, but I have an exercise that will help all of you. Follow me. Kakashi took his three pupils outside to a nearby forest. He came to a halt before a massive tree. The exercise, said Kakashi, is to climb trees. Sakura and Sasuke appeared perplexed, but Naruto grinned. Sasuke made an unsuccessful attempt to conceal it. Under his mask, Kakashi declared, you are going to do it with only your feet. Grinning sweetly, Sakura and Sasuke now appeared disoriented. Not possible, suggested Sakura. Kakashi grinned broadly, if I can do it, you have to do it topless. Sakura's hands automatically moved to cover her chest as she flushed. Pervert! Exclaimed Sakura. Naruto was laughing and essentially rolling on the ground. Teasingly, Naruto, since you're laughing, Kakashi said, you try doing it. Naruto's laughter ceased. Naruto grinned and said, if I am able to do it, sensei. Instead, you are treating us all lunch in a location of our choosing. Kakashi perspired over this. Naruto had a reputation for eating. He wouldn't feel satisfied after eating ramen for hours. Kakashi pondered whether this also held true for other foods. He reasoned that Naruto couldn't possibly accomplish this at this point in his ninja career. And if you fail? Inquired Kakashi after saying, if I fail, sensei, Naruto said, I will steal the Hokage's peeping crystal ball for you. Kakashi's gaze expanded. The Hokage used the fabled crystal ball, an all-seeing device, to keep an eye on Konoha. It could appear anywhere, including private clubs and bathhouses where patrons are typically inebriated and unruly, particularly the girls. His habit of peeping was well known among the Anbu. You're on, Blondie, cried Kakashi, filled with excitement at the prospect of possessing the all-seeing crystal ball. His teammates both let out a gasp. You're giving our pervert of a sensei the access to all the naked girls in Konoha? Sakura screamed. I could be getting us a free lunch at the most expensive restaurant in Konoha, Naruto replied. That's when Sakura stopped talking. The Golden Leaf was the priciest eatery in Konoha. 100 instant ramen bowls would be equivalent to 1 bowl of ramen there. Only the best of the best dined. Naruto teasingly said, ready to kiss your money goodbye, sensei? Kakashi just grinned. You have to be able to do it first, interrupted Kakashi. Naruto moved in the direction of a tree, pushing chakra into the trunk. He planted one foot on it, then he put his other foot on the tree. After raising it off the ground, Kakashi's gaze expanded. Naruto ascended the tree one more step. As Naruto ascended the tree to the summit, Kakashi was already bidding farewell to his money at this point. Sakura was ecstatic, and Sasuke felt a little envious. From the top of the tree, Naruto cried, Golden Leaf, here we come. Kakashi began. How did you? But Naruto's landing next to him cut him off. Naruto uttered, I had to know this, sensei, it was vital. Kakashi recognized his meaning. Naruto gave his teammates an explanation of, the purpose of this exercise is to improve your chakra control. I don't see how climbing trees can help us with the fight against Zabuza, Sakura replied. Well, brashly Kakashi said, more control over chakra allows your techniques to be stronger. Sasuke and Sakura appeared to comprehend some of it, but not all of it. Naruto went on to say, tree climbing trains you to release a fixed amount of chakra. Most offensive techniques ninjas use require a fixed amount of chakra. The better a ninja can control his chakra, the more powerful the technique is when used. For example, after flashing his hands through several seals, Kakashi reached the tiger seal. Kaden. Gokakyu. From his mouth, a house-sized ball of fire blasted skyward. It briefly flew upward before running out of fuel and disappearing. Kakashi questioned, Sasuke, can your Gokakyu match mine? Sasuke gave a headshake. That's the difference, Kakashi went on to say. Since my control is superior to his, my techniques come out more powerful. Both of them gave a nod. Now, Kakashi said, giving his two students instructions, remember this, if you use too much chakra, the tree trunk will collapse and you will be flung in the opposite direction, but too little and you slide off. Sakura and Sasuke both nodded. Kakashi gave the advice, practice until your chakra runs out. Naruto will supervise you for this exercise, since he can't do anything at this point. With a nod, Naruto sat down across from Sasuke and Sakura's training area. As his initial attempt to climb failed, Sasuke asked, how do you already know this? Naruto answered, when your life is in jeopardy, you learn quickly. He shot Sasuke a glance that made him reconsider his course of action. Sasuke ignored the situation and carried on with his training. The morning went like this. Both of them would practice until they were exhausted, take a short break, and then resume being the bookworm that she was. Sakura grasped the idea quickly and arrived at the top of the tree before Sasuke did. She spent the remainder of the day sleeping next to Naruto. Sasuke was growing irritated later in the afternoon because he was unable to get it down. He approached Naruto and took a seat next to Sakura. I need some help, he said, refusing to meet their eyes. Being the rookie of the year was a minor setback to his self-esteem. Naruto grinned. He was aware that Sasuke found it difficult to ask for his assistance with this. Alright Sasuke, Naruto said, what is wrong? With annoyance, Sasuke remarked, I can't seem to get the concept down. Well, you have the rough idea already, since you were able to climb up the tree some ways, said Naruto. It's like holding your breath. Sasuke, you cannot release your hold on the chakra. With a nod, Sasuke got up to try again. Sakura asked curiously, why was it that I was able to complete this exercise faster than Sasuke-kun? I wasn't really the top person in class that could fight. Well Sakura, said Naruto, honestly it was because of your small reserves. A smaller reserve of chakra is easier to control than a larger one. It's like water, a small amount can be controlled easily by a drain, while a large body of water needs something more powerful to control it. As the information dawned on Sakura, she nodded. It's not that Sasuke is weak, according to Naruto. It's just that he has a lot of chakra. Sakura gave another nod. Naruto said, well, Sakura, first, I think it's time for us to start on your training. Despite meeping, Sakura nodded. Naruto began by explaining, given the roles on our team, it would appear that Sasuke and I are the primary powerhouses, and you would be the long-range support or medic or something like that. Sakura nodded. She knew she wasn't strong, and it had hurt to be compared in that way. Given the fact that our fight will be occurring in a week or so, we don't really have enough time to teach you a very strong technique, Naruto said. Sakura gave another nod. Naruto explained, You will have to take my place up front because I won't be able to do much in the next fight, being as injured as I am. You will need to be able to fight for that. Sakura stiffened. Naruto extended a hand. Domu no just you. Naruto's hand turned brownish black, and he almost walked toward a huge rock before pulling it back and giving it a powerful punch that left an arm-sized hole in the rock when it struck it. Sakura's mouth fell open. This will be one of the 2 techniques I will be teaching you, Naruto laughed. The second one will depend on if you are able to master this one quick enough. Kakashi grinned as he glanced at his team from the branches where he was resting, thinking, this team is good, maybe they would survive this encounter after all. Sakura nodded and listened as Naruto explained the technique to her. Naruto, who was now walking alone in an open field, ran a hand lightly over his wound, which was healing more quickly than it would have for a normal person, but not quickly enough to get him to peak condition for the fight with Zabuza. He whispered, Genjutsu Kai, and his hands formed a seal. The illusion vanished instantly, revealing Naruko's true form, and she chose to sit beneath a tree in the middle of the field. The shade it offered and the soft breeze that blew by made her hair fly a little, which was very soothing. She fell asleep within a minute. After a while, Naruko heard some ruffling noises and opened her eyes to see a figure with black hair bending over and gathering wild herbs to put in the basket next to the person. Isn't today a lovely day? In an attempt to strike up a conversation, Naruto asked, and the individual in question turned around, grinning and displaying her delicate feminine features. The newcomer said, yes, it is, and added, my name is Haku. In return, the blonde said, I'm Naruko, it's nice to meet you. Haku grinned and sat down next to Naruko, who looked closely at the woman. Her skin lived up to her name, Haku, which means white. It was white as snow, as if she had never seen a day of sun in her life, and it made her glow with a soft, gentle beauty. Naruko could see that her breasts were very nicely shaped, slightly smaller than her own, under the blue flowery kimono, which was slightly loose. Her sash was tied around her tiny, slender waist, giving her breasts more consent. Her legs were mostly covered, but as she sat down, parts of her calves were exposed. Her face was also white as snow. Naruko said, you are very pretty, which caused the girl with the black hair to blush a little. Haku said, thank you, adding, you are very pretty yourself. Haku turned to see Naruko's Konoha headband, but all Naruko could do was smile. Haku said, you're a ninja, and Naruko nodded. Naruko replied, my team is on a mission from Konoha, and then she lay down on the grass, gazing up at the clouds through the gaps left by the tree's leaves. When Haku said, I thought ninjas train a lot in their free time, Naruko lifted up her green t-shirt to show a heavily bandaged torso beneath her black sports bra. I was stabbed, replied Naruko, by a huge sword that belonged to a formidable foe. Until the wound heals, I am unable to train. That day, Haku witnessed the battle and remembered that the person stabbed was a blonde boy, but that he had changed into a girl just seconds later. Instead, Haku got down on her hands and knees, leaned close to the blonde's face, and Naruko turned her head slightly to meet her gentle gaze. Haku half considered killing the blonde ninja now to spare her the trouble of a future battle, but she held back when she saw the blonde's easy smile as she gazed up at the sky through the leaves. Your eyes, Haku said, they are so pretty, like the endless sky. Naruko smiled once more and inhaled deeply, enjoying the scent of Haku, which was a cool minty scent. When Naruko gestured for Haku to lie next to her, Haku gladly obliged. For a brief instant, Naruko felt as though she was in heaven. Everything was ideal, and she wasn't sure why, but it felt good to be with this girl. There was something that bonded them. There's something about you, Haku, Naruko said. I feel so relaxed around you. I feel the same thing about you too, Haku responded. It's hard to explain. Naruko thought about what she had said, and it was true. She felt a connection, but it was inexplicable, and since they had just recently met, it was something she had never experienced before. She enjoyed the novel experience. Naruko, Haku called, to which the blonde responded with a muffled hum. How do you get strong? You want to be a ninja, but why? Naruko let out a sigh. I became a ninja because I had to, she replied. There are people whom I don't know, but are hunting me for something I have no control over. Haku looked at the blonde from her side. I become strong because I have to, Naruko went on. Protecting the people I care about requires me to become strong. I have to give my life to protect my loved ones, who are very important to me. Naruko's long blonde hair was spread out next to her, and Haku extended a hand to play with it. Haku's smile vanished as Naruko said, I have a power that people fear greatly, and there are people who would see me dead just because of it. She said, it's not fair. I have people who care about me, and I care about them, Naruko said with a smile. The blonde turned to face the stunning black-haired girl as Haku said, "Naruko, you will become very strong." With a smile, Naruko pulled her gaze away from Haku's captivating black eyes and sat up, then pushed her down to the grass and leaned in over her blonde hair falling like golden rain onto Haku's face. Her hand found its way to Haku's cheek, caressing it softly, and Haku moaned softly and leaned into the touch. Naruko's tongue gently pushed her way into Haku's mouth, feeling her give way to Naruko's demands, and she met her own with her own. Twisting and twirling around each other like tangled vines, Naruko wrapped her hands around Haku's slim waist and held her in a gentle hug, then moved from her waist to her face, cupping it as she released the French kiss that bound them together, leaving a trail of saliva hanging between them before breaking off a second later. Naruko grinned as she observed Haku's blushing face, which was adorable. Haku started to say, "That was..." But Naruko put a finger to her lips to silence her then, with more passion than before, Naruko leaned in and kissed her, letting her go. After a few minutes Haku was panting like a schoolgirl, her face was pink and warm from blushing, and she had a tiny stain of saliva at the sides of her mouth from making out with the feisty blonde. Haku blushed even more when Naruko whispered, "You are beautiful," into her ear. Her heart was thumping, her mind was racing, and she had just made out with a complete stranger. What was worse was that she enjoyed either the soft, sweet lips, the way the blonde's tongue fought for control in her mouth, the way Naruko held her tightly as if she were someone important, the way Naruko kept complimenting her, the way it made her feel wanted and unabandoned even though they knew nothing about one another other than their names. Haku closed her eyes and savored the comfort of the attractive blonde currently encircling her body. She had to admit that it was quite soothing in this manner. The two of them spent the entire day together, in the company of the warm sun and the refreshing breeze that blew through the expansive green field. With two of his students gathered around Tazuna, Kakashi assumed a defensive position. Sakura and Sasuke each held a kunai in front of them, and a dark mist enveloped them, one that Kakashi could sense in his bones. From the haze came the voice, "Kakashi, it seems we meet again." As he recognized the voice, Kakashi narrowed his eyes and heard a metallic swing to his left, which he prudently blocked with his kunai. A second later, he heard a metallic impact. When they heard a light swoosh, Sasuke and Sakura wisely blocked two incoming senbon. Aiming their kunai at their eyes, they did their best to scan their surroundings, but the mist kept them from seeing anything. "There's more than one enemy," Sakura and Sasuke agreed. Zabuza mocked from the fog, "Your students are trembling. Kakashi, is he scared of dying?" Sakura and Sasuke both grinned as he glanced at his hands, which were shaking horribly. Sasuke remarked, "We aren't trembling in fear, you blind bat," as the second assassin tried to stab him with a senbon. "We're excited," declared Sakura, "Domu no jutsu." When the newbie assassin tried to stab Sakura, her hands instantly turned brownish black, and she punched the masked assassin in the stomach, sending him flying back and landing next to Zabuza. The assassin's feminine voice, "Zabuza-sama," was cut off when Zabuza gave her a fierce look. "It seems your students have gotten stronger," said Zabuza, "but they are still no match for my friend here." Kakashi's Sharingan came to light. "Sakura, Sasuke, protect him from the second assailant," Kakashi said, and as both of his students nodded, he charged into the mist. Kakashi's Sharingan saw through the mist instantly, and he was suddenly in front of the demon of the mist. His body tensed for battle. He trusted his students to take care of Tazuna, and his top priority was to keep this ranked missing ninja away from his students. Sakura was watching over their client while Sasuke engaged the second attacker. Although he had made progress, Sasuke was unable to keep up with his opponent's superior speed, and Haku was trying to make him make a mistake by using her senbon to swipe at his vital organs once, forcing him to block with his kunai before swiftly vanishing and reappearing behind him in another attempt to kill him. Sasuke had always been able to block both, much to Haku's annoyance. She needed to step up her game. She swiped again, forcing him to block again, and her free hand swiftly ran through some seals. Shusho Sensatsu. Haku was in front of him, trying another swipe, and Sasuke flinched. He was not going to be able to block this strike. Vapor from the mist suddenly condensed and formed into numerous floating needles surrounding Sasuke. He jumped just as they flew towards him. Suiban. Haku's arm was caught in midair by a whip that appeared to be made of water, and Sasuke traced the whip back to its origin. Sakura, the whip belonged to her, and she had thwarted the assassin's attempt. Haku swiftly executed hand seals and slammed her hands on the ground as Sasuke took advantage of the moment to deliver a powerful roundhouse kick to the assassin's head, sending her flying a few feet away before she flipped and landed on the ground. "You don't have jutsu." Blocks of ice emerged from the ground and traveled at crazy speeds from Haku to Sakura and Sasuke. missing her by a few inches as Sakura tackled Tazuna to the side and Sasuke ducked by jumping. Sakura hurriedly shouted, "Tazuna-san, please find Naruto," saying, "He will be able to protect you." Sakura watched as the blonde ninja vanished into the mist, and Tazuna nodded before running to find him. "I'm ready, Sasuke-kun," Sakura said resolutely as the suiban materialized in her grasp. She swung it vigorously, and the whip slammed loudly to the ground. Sasuke gave a nod. He said, "Take point, Sakura, Sasuke. I will back you from behind with my fire jutsus." Sakura gave a nod. "Be careful," Sasuke cautioned, "she is fast and deadly." Sakura gave a nod. She swung the suiban once more before charging at Haku. She tried to bind Haku with her suiban as she got closer, but she was able to jump past the attempt with ease. Sasuke swiftly raked his hands through a number of seals after spotting an opening. "Kaden. Gokakyu." The airborne Haku twisted her body to avoid being burned when he blasted a huge fireball at her. With a loud click on her ninja sandals, she hit the ground, and Sakura leapt to her feet. She leapt to her feet and swung her suiban powerfully in Haku's direction. Haku leapt to the side to avoid the attack, squatting to sweep her feet from beneath her. Sasuke was already ahead of her. Haku was caught in the act and didn't have time to react. With a moan, she collapsed onto her back on the ground. Sakura immediately used a kunai to stab her in the heart for a few seconds. Haku remained motionless just as Sakura and Sasuke were about to unwind. The Haku vanished in a puff and was replaced by a shattered senbon. They swore, "Suiden. Miseraba." Both Sakura and Sasuke made the poor decision to turn their heads toward the voice. Both of the Konoha ninjas were smashed into one of the bridge's beams by a violent jet of water. Both of them were completely exhausted by the attack. "I will show you," Haku said, her voice tinged with ice, "the extent of my powers." Tazuna had arrived at his residence. He was aware that Naruto was sleeping upstairs after hurriedly entering through the front door. He was stunned by what he saw. His grandson was holding a kitchen knife, and his daughter was restrained and on the ground. They were being attacked by two thugs brandishing katanas. It appeared to have occurred only a short while ago, as the thugs would have easily killed them both if they had had more time. With all of his might, Inari yelled, "Do not touch my mother." Tazuna fixed his gaze on his grandson. He was wearing a determined expression. Considering how much Inari resembled his son-in-law, he grinned. Inari gave the two assassins his most intense glare. He was actually afraid that he stood between them and his mother. He was on the verge of giving up, but he recalled what Naruto had told him. Rewind outside. Naruto observed Sasuke performing the tree climbing exercise. Sakura was by his side, unsuccessfully attempting the suiban as they prepared for the impending conflict. Inari observed from behind a nearby tree. Sakura grumbled, "I can't seem to hold the water," after her attempt failed for the umpteenth time. "Sakura," Naruto explained, sounding a little irritated, "after you gather chakra into your hands, you must be able to visualize the whip. Think of it as a wet leather rope that you can smack your enemies with." Sakura gave a nod and went back to her training. Inari yelled at the top of his lungs, "Why do you all try so hard? You will all die anyways. What difference does it make whether you train or not?" Naruto scowled. He rose quickly, disregarding the sharp pain that radiated from his wound. From careless movement, he approached the child who was staring at him and gave him a forceful slap across the face. "You are a disgrace to your father's name," Naruto said. Sakura and Sasuke both gasped. Sakura started to say, "Naruto," but Naruto cut her off with a stern expression. "Your father died protecting his family and home," Naruto went on, "while you stew in your own filth, ignorant of your father's legacy." Inari yelled, "You didn't know my father. You didn't see what happened to him." Naruto hissed angrily, "I know of men like your father. He sacrificed everything he had to ensure you and your mother's survival. Even your grandfather, an aged man who is supposed to enjoy his last few years of life, is doing something for his home. You are a spoiled brat who cannot do anything. You are not worthy of your father's name and blood." Naruto revealed his bandaged torso. After removing his shirt, there was blood leaking through the bandages. Naruto said, "I took a giant blade to the chest for your grandpa. It nearly cost me my life." Inari gulped, "If I had known I would be protecting people like you, I would have just turned back and stopped wasting my time," Naruto grumbled. "Naruto," Sakura spoke up at last, "he's a kid." She guided him to the house with the first aid kit. After placing a hand on his shoulder, it was time to change the bandages. When Naruto quickly got to his feet, the wound had reopened. "A soft, Inari-san," Sakura called. "Please forgive Naruto. He's had a hard life where everything he has is the result of his hard work and determination." Inari sobbed as he ran back to his room. As he sobbed into the pillow, he held a photograph of his father. He kept thinking about what Naruto had said. His thoughts were rushing through his head. Was he truly worthless? Was his father's name truly tarnished by this? Did he not deserve the name and blood of his father? He examined his hands. My father's blood flows in these hands. He thought he took a seat, he had made up his mind he'd get over his introspection, he wouldn't be worthless, he would be deserving of the blood and name of his father, he was going to defend his home and family the way his father had done. The end of the flashback as the two thugs ignored him and pressed closer to his grandson and daughter, Tazuna gasped. Tsunami said, "Inari, run, leave me." "Never," was the child's defiant response. "I will not let my family down anymore." Enden. When the two thugs turned to face the voice, they were startled to see a fireball blazing in their direction. They recoiled when the fireball appeared in front of them out of nowhere, and all they could do was scream as the flames consumed them and sent them to their agonizing demise. As Naruto descended the stairs, holding his wound over his t-shirt, Tazuna let out a sigh of relief. "Naruto-san, your teammates are in trouble," Tazuna exclaimed. Naruto scowled. "This is bad," said Naruto. "I am in no condition to fight anyone." "Now what?" inquired Inari, firmly. "I have no choice but to fight," Naruto replied. Tsunami started to say, "You're wounded," but Naruto cut her off. "My teammates are in danger," declared Naruto. "I have to go." Tsunami gave a nod. "Be careful, Naruto-san." With a nod, Naruto left for the battlefield. Sasuke collapsed to his knees, gasping. He was a pin cushion all over. He felt as though 1,000 bees had stung him. He surveyed his surroundings once more in an attempt to figure out how to defeat his adversary. The dome of demonic ice mirrors encircled him. Though he was aware of it, his adversary appeared to be everywhere. He was aware that she moved between each mirror at unfathomable speeds, creating the illusion that there was a large amount of her. Sasuke turned to face his adversary. He could now follow her movements to a certain extent, but attacking her was a different story. It is not always possible to avoid an attack just because it is visible. He positioned himself defensively, shielding his head and vital organs in preparation for another assault. This is when Haku launched his attack. Sensatsu Suisho. Above him, dozens of needles materialized and rained down on him. They pierced Sasuke's skin, making him the first Uchiha porcupine in the history of their clan, and he screamed. On his journey to the battlefield, Naruto leapt from branch to branch. Though he had a lot on his mind, the primary concern was how to save his teammates. In light of his condition, he could hear his other tenant's voice. He was being ridiculed by the enormous fox. From the depths of his cage, Kyuubi scoffed, "You want to fight in your condition? It would be easier to just behead yourself and present it to your enemy. If you have nothing useful to add, you useless giant furball, I suggest you keep your jaws shut," Naruto growled. Retrenchment to the ends of his dark cage was Kyuubi's response. "We shall see, human, we shall see," he said. The blonde was forced to acknowledge that the bloody fox was correct. He had very little chance against his opponent because of the state of his body. He would have to use different strategies against his opponent because he was not a very good mover. In contrast, Kakashi was doing better than his pupils. He was not gaining any ground on his opponent, but he was also not losing any. The two strong ninjas were surrounded by craters and water. The two ninjas threw powerful water ninjutsus everywhere, with Kakashi imitating Zabuza's methods and Zabuza attacking most of the time. After an odd number of ninjutsus, they would practice stealth killing and taijutsu, both of them making a concerted effort to kill the other. The cycle went on and on. Minutes later, Naruto reached the battlefield. He could see the outline of what looked like a dome, but his vision was obscured by a clearing mist further away. He could hear metal clashing, and if he squinted closely enough, he could see two constantly moving black dots that appeared to clash every few seconds. He looked at another figure leaning against one of the railings of the incomplete bridge. It was pink and red. He recognized Sakura. He hurried over to her. "Sakura," Naruto called softly, shaking her shoulders tenderly aside from a few cuts and bruises. She appeared to be in good health. Her head had a bleeding wound that suggested blunt force trauma. Beside her, her suiban was merely a pool of water. She stirred when he gave her another gentle shake. She questioned sleepily, "Naruto?" Naruto gave a nod. With concern, Naruto inquired, "Are you all right?" Although Sakura nodded, her mind was actually blaring like a stereo set to maximum volume. She had blurry, unfocused vision beside her. Her ears were ringing like a banshee screaming uncontrollably. "I just need to lie down for a while," she replied. "Please help Sasuke-kun. He's in the dome." With a nod, Naruto headed for the dome. He heard a loud, bloody scream of pain. As he got closer, Naruto let out a gasp. He recognized the voice as Sasuke's. Naruto rang out, "Sasuke." As he got closer to the dome, he recognized Sasuke's dark hair and blue shirt. He lay unconscious on the ground. Almost every inch of his body, from head to toe, was embedded with needles. Haku shouted, "Time for the finishing blow." From the mirrors above the ground that surrounded the unconscious ninja, needles suddenly shot out in all directions, toward Sasuke with haste. Naruto emerged at Sasuke's side and held out his palms. Harayuheki. In order to protect Sasuke and himself from the attack, a clear wall of water appeared between Naruto and the needles. Sasuke. Wake up! Naruto shook the unconscious Uchiha and cried out. It's over for you all, Haku declared. A beat skipped in Naruto's heart. That voice was familiar to him. Naruto remarked, I know it's you, Haku, I know your voice. Together, Naruto's hands created a seal, Genjutsu Kai. Her masculine features were immediately replaced by feminine ones. Haku removed her mask. In reply she grinned. Why? Inquired Naruto. The response from Haku was, there is someone important to me, that wants the old man dead. You are in the way. Making eye contact with the girl she had been with the day before, Naruto was unable to speak. Haku expressed regret, saying, I am sorry it had to come to this, I really enjoyed our time together. Sadistically, Naruto said, if only we met under different circumstances. Haku was only able to nod. Abruptly, Haku emerged in every mirror within the dome. Naruto prepared a defensive maneuver with her hands. Shit, she thought I'll have to use my ninjutsu to fight because I'm not very good at moving. Sensatsu Suisho. 1,000 needles of ice condensed and floated ominously in the air. Abruptly, they all sprang for Naruto. Harayuheki. The needles ceased to move as a wall of water formed between them and Naruto. Then Haku hurried through a few hand seals. Sweden. Mizurapa. Haku's mouth exploded in a violent jet of water that swiftly approached Naruto and Sasuke. When Naruto saw the attack, she swiftly flashed through her own seals. Doden. Doryuheki. From her mouth, Naruto spat earth in a semicircle onto the ground, which instantly exploded into a tall defensive wall as they collided. The wall stopped the water attack. Naruto had already completed her attack's hand seals. Doden. Doryuden. From the ground, an earthen dragon head emerged, launching earth projectiles at the ice mirror where Haku was now staying. The ice mirror was struck by the projectiles, but it was not even scratched. It's useless, declared Haku. Your attacks cannot hope to do anything to my mirror. Naruto scowled. You know, I was holding back until now, but it seems that I would have to take things seriously, Naruto stated. Haku scowled. According to Naruto, I wanted to stop you, I didn't want to kill you. Haku was back in every mirror, Naruto said sharply, but you leave me no choice. Instead she turned to Sakura and Sasuke. Sasuke needed medical assistance more than Sakura did. She would have to get this done fast, even if it meant putting herself in danger. Besides Sasuke, who was obviously unconscious, Naruto knelt down the young blonde sighed with relief as she prepared for battle after a hand on his neck verified his heartbeat. Futon. Tuketsu Fu. After taking a deep breath, Haku let out a puff of wind. Some of Naruto's skin was immediately frozen when it struck her. She raised her hands in a motion that suggested she was pulling something up from the floor. Naruto and the unconscious Sasuke were protected from the merciless cold by a wall of earth that rose up to block the incoming winds. Naruto examined her palms. She already had freeze burns on some of her hands from the winds. Her hair was also frozen at the ends. An approaching projectile forced Naruto to retreat back into her earthen stronghold as she peered over the wall. Naruto thought, we must leave the dome soon. She was aware that she and her teammates would suffer more if the battle was prolonged. To reduce the harm done to herself, the bridge, and those around her, it would be simpler to end it right now. You know, Naruto remarked, leaning against her wall of earth. Yesterday was the best day of my life. Haku grinned. It was mine too. It's too bad it's come down to this. If it were under different circumstances, we'd be lovers, I think. Naruto's gaze expanded. She wished they hadn't met in this manner. It was unjust. She was going to kill. It was the best day of her life, perhaps the best thing she had ever experienced. Haku stepped out of the mirrors. She was at Naruto's side in an instant, and he didn't even bat an eyelid. Haku took hold of her face and gave the blonde a passionate kiss. One last kiss, according to Haku, as a farewell gift for what could have been. I suppose that's it then, Naruto uttered. This is goodbye. As Haku returned to the mirrors, Naruto wiped the one tear from her eyes and took a deep, trembling breath to fortify her resolve. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Alongside the first Naruto, another one appeared. The clone knew what to do and kneeled next to the unconscious Sasuke without saying a word. Harayuheki. The clone erected a wall of water to shield Sasuke and herself, allowing Naruto to engage Haku without interruption. Kaden. Enden. One of the mirrors was struck by Naruto's enraged jet of fire. It struck and collided with the mirror, but it did nothing to it. My mirrors are not something you can melt or break, Haku said she had no time to block or respond as thousands of Senbon suddenly descended upon her in a few seconds. She was a blonde pincushion. Naruko thought, what was that? She seemed to attack from all directions at once. She glanced at the mirrors, each one featuring Haku. The attack occurred again before she could give it any thought. Needles flew everywhere, puncturing her skin on every part of her body. With a sigh of relief, she turned to face Sasuke and saw that the clone was protecting him by maintaining the barrier. In contrast, she wasn't doing so well. She needed to know the method Haku was employing. She recalled that all other images vanished as soon as Haku left the mirrors, so there was absolutely no chance that the mirrors could replicate another Haku. Her thoughts were interrupted by another attack. She was ready this time. Harayuheki. When the needles struck Naruko's barrier, they ceased and fell to the ground without causing any harm. She reasoned that there was only one original. There is only one Haku, as evidenced by the fact that only one of them left the mirror earlier. The issue is that she is simultaneously attacking from multiple angles. Mirrors only create reflections. They are unable to create another original. Sensatsu Suisho. Way above her, Naruko could see the water combining to form senbons that resembled the ones she used in combat. The newly formed needles swiftly sliced through the air as they flew in her direction. Naruko rolled to the sides to avoid it. When she turned around after feeling a sharp pain behind her, she saw that Haku had inserted senbon into her back, giving her a more hedgehog-like appearance. Dai Enden. Taking a deep breath, Naruko blasted a huge ball of fire in the direction of the nearest mirror it struck, and as fire and ice collided, smoke and hissing emerged. However, Naruko scowled as the hissing stopped and the mirror seemed to be in good condition. What a crazy mirror, she thought. However, Kakashi and Zabuza were still at a standstill. In addition to being a skilled swordsman, Zabuza was also an excellent practitioner of taijutsu, matching Kakashi's every kick and punch while deftly dodging, evading, and blocking. They had already engaged in a battle of ninja techniques, and although Zabuza was far less skilled than Kakashi, who was a man of 1,000 techniques, he eventually fully grasped them, giving his techniques a slight advantage and increased potency over Kakashi's. Kakashi was finding it extremely difficult to hold his ground in this battle, not that he was losing. In addition, he had already pulled out his Sharingan. Only when the user can see the direction of the attack can he easily predict his opponent's next move 1 second before it occurs. God forbid, Zabuza's reputation as the silent killer was undeserved. His opponent was not to be taken lightly, even on this misty day when his Sharingan broke through the artificial mist. Zabuza would ambush him from behind. Additionally, Kakashi must spin his body or turn his head in order for the Sharingan to see behind him. This pattern was what held Kakashi at bay because, although he is slightly stronger than his opponent, Kakashi cannot fully utilize the renowned Sharingan, one of the most renounced Kekkei Genkai in the world, unless the user makes direct eye contact. Additionally, Zabuza's lack of eye contact at the moment made his Sharingan somewhat pointless. The heavy silence between them was broken by an ear-piercing scream. The dome was the source of the sound, so Kakashi looked in that direction. He began to move toward the dome, but Zabuza stopped him. Zabuza said, "Your fight is with me, copycat," as he took a position. A bunch of senbon clung to Naruko's hands, holding her in place as she was pinned against one of the dome's mirrors. She appeared to be going to be crucified. Her wound had already reopened and her breaths were already labored, resulting in blood-soaked bandages that were just barely visible through her t-shirt. Haku examined her own physique. She had a dislocated shoulder that hung awkwardly by her side. Parts of her torso were covered in burns, which meant that her kimono was also burned, exposing the damage from the burns on her abdomen. She had a busted lip that was swollen and bleeding, and her face was covered in bruises. With a small blade in her hand, Haku raised her good arm and declared, "It is over," preparing to strike the wounded Naruko with the final blow. In his cage, Kyuubi exclaimed, "You are useless." As Naruko prepared to take the lethal blow, Kyuubi was correct. She was pitiful and weak. In addition to nearly dying in combat just a week earlier, she was now unable to save her teammates when they most needed her. Abruptly, Naruko appeared before the cage of the enormous fox. His scowl was intense and angry. Red chakra seeped out of the cage's openings. Kyuubi roared from within as the red, poisonous chakra engulfed her, saying, "Be thankful, Brad, that I have saved your weak self as well as your useless teammates." Kyuubi had no intention of dying anytime soon. Haku turned her gaze to the stranded girl. She stepped back in terror as she felt a poisonous aura emanate from her. As soon as she finished, Naruko abruptly raised her head, displaying red-slitted eyes and long, feral canines. The senbons that had imprisoned her were released as red chakra started to envelop her body, with her hair swinging and the chakra roaring and swirling all around her. She was now down in all fours. Naruko roared a savage battle cry. Futon. Tuketsu Fu. Haku sent out a chilly blast that struck Naruko. However, it had no impact. She appeared to be protected by the chakra. Naruko was on her in a flash. Leaping with amazing speed and slamming into Haku like a high-impact missile, it struck Haku, sending it out into the open and through her mirror. Half a second later, Naruko emerged, landing on top of Haku with her claws up, ready to pierce her heart. Haku closed her eyes and grinned as Naruko struck the attractive girl with dark hair, killing her. Haku waited for her body to be struck. She was ready to die. She would have failed Zabuza if she was unable to finish the task that was given to her. Zabuza also takes setbacks seriously. She would at least pass away with some dignity if she died now. Knowing that she had sacrificed everything for Zabuza, the impact did not occur. Haku's eye cracked open. She was on top of Naruko, who had blue eyes. Her teeth were no longer feral, and there was no red chakra around her an inch above her heart. The hand that was meant to pierce it stopped. Haku inquired, "Why did you stop?" Naruko left her just as Naruko was about to explain. They heard lightning. Zabuza was apprehended, seemingly called through the earth. He was kneeling on the ground with both hands broken and restrained by a pack of ninja dogs. He was exhausted and immobile. The battle was lost for him. With a right lightning blue glow and a loud lightning sound that sounded like 1,000 birds chirping, Kakashi turned to face his captive as his Reikari charged in his hand. Kakashi declared, "Your end is here, Zabuza," and began to charge at him. When Haku saw the attack Kakashi had envisioned, she gasped. Haku stepped in to stop the assault. All of this occurred in a matter of seconds. Perhaps even less blood flew everywhere as a result of Kakashi's assassination technique connecting with the body. Zabuza coughed up blood, and Haku looked helpless before he collapsed to the cement floor, as dead as a leaf. She remembered what had happened only a few seconds before. Rewind. Kakashi launched an attack on Zabuza, but Haku moved to stop it. As soon as she started to move, she sensed a sensation encircling her. She had been restrained by Naruko using Suiban, one of which had locked itself around her legs, bringing them together and making them useless. Her arms were firmly pinned to her sides as another one encircled her torso. She raised her head to witness Kakashi's technique strike Zabuza's body, entering his heart and piercing his ribs, killing him nearly immediately. The end of the flashback. Naruko let go of the young, attractive woman with black hair. She hurried to Zabuza's side as soon as she could from her position. Naruko could only watch as she sobbed uncontrollably and repeatedly shook the missing ninja's lifeless body in the vain hope that he was still alive. However, that was not to be. Naruko took a position next to her and placed a hand on Haku's shoulder. However, Haku quickly gave her a savage slap on the cheek after swatting her hand away. She muttered to herself, "I hate you," loudly enough for Naruko to hear. Her eyes were red and swollen, but they were also filled with hate and rage, resentment toward the Konoha team, especially Naruko, for preventing her from intercepting the technique, and anger that she was powerless to prevent her master's death. As Naruko caressed her cheek, her face stayed expressionless. It was a predictable response. She did, after all, prevent Haku from saving Zabuza. Kakashi arrived and held her in place. In an informal tone, Kakashi inquired, "What happened to your illusion?" "It is complicated," told Naruko. "Mr. Dog Anbu." Kakashi chuckled. "So you recognize me? I know who is not an immediate enemy and who is, let's just put it that way, Sensei," Naruko responded. They were interrupted by the sound of a walking cane in the distance. The voice said, "So he failed, I see." As he appeared out of the fog, he was accompanied by a large number of mercenaries who were equipped with axes, flails, spears, pikes, and blades. The person identified as Gato said, "I so wanted to kill him myself." While wearing a smug expression, Haku's head turned, revealing her shivering body and clenched teeth. Gato staggered back a little in terror as her eyes glared at him. He was able to gather himself. "Kill them all. The one who gets the old man for me will receive a 100% bonus," said he. The ninjas came alive with a roar and began to charge at Kakashi and his group. Because he was restrained, Haku was powerless. She fought fiercely against her restraints in an attempt to murder the pathetic excuse of the man who had initially employed her master. However, her efforts were in vain because the bond's head remained firm and would not move. "Idiots like you," Naruko spoke first, "are worthless trash that cannot touch us." With Kakashi at her side, Naruko bounded forward. Blood was immediately shed when they encountered the first of the mercenaries. As they dodged left and right and danced around their clumsy attacks, Naruko and Kakashi effortlessly dealt the death blow to each of them until only Gato remained. Gato said, "I have reinforcements on the way." As Kakashi and his blonde pupil gradually drew closer to him, the tycoon was terrified by the evil glare on their blood-stained faces. Beyond the fog, a childish voice called out, "Oh, were you referring to this reinforcements?" When Gato turned around, he saw that the reinforcements he had relied on were tied together like a bundle of sticks, beaten and swollen, with a crossbow in his hand. Inari stands in front of a sizable group of armed villagers. The irate blonde helped lift Gato off the ground. Naruko hissed, "So you're the trash who's behind this escapade," while gripping Gato's neck. "I would have you suffer the most painful of tortures, endure the most horrible of moments, and face the most terrible things which you hope to never face, and by the end of it, death would be the only thing you would look forward to." Gato met her eyes directly. It wasn't typical. He had never witnessed such a form of evil and hatred in his life. He wished he had passed away right then and there. It felt like confronting a real-life demon. As Naruko held the terrified Gato in the air as if he were nothing, Inari watched. Even though Gato was writhing in her hold, she was unfazed. Inari had been thinking about two things the entire time. One of them was the location of the aforementioned blonde, and the other was the identity of the enigmatic blonde and her striking resemblance to Naruto. The sound of Gato landing on the ground interrupted his train of thought. Naruko said, "He's all yours," and she spun around. As they brought the injured Sakura and Sasuke back to Tazuna's house to spend the night, Kakashi could only sigh. They also picked up the captured Haku. Team 7 had left the Wave Country in silence by the following morning. 3 weeks had passed since the mission to Wave Country. Recounting what happened after they left the Wave Country, Naruto lay in his bed. Rewind. In an effort to travel farther more quickly, Naruko skipped from tree to tree with Kakashi and Sakura, who was wearing a bandage over his head. She appeared to occasionally sway to the left or right. With concern, Naruko questioned, "Sakura, are you alright?" "Yeah, I'm fine," Sakura said half drowsily. The injured Sasuke was being carried on Kakashi's shoulders when he turned to face Naruko, whose long blonde hair was blowing in the wind. Sakura had placed the unconscious body of the captured Haku on her shoulders when Haku couldn't stop talking about how much she hated Naruko for stopping her. Sakura, even in her current dazed state, managed to give her a powerful punch. Sakura took the initiative to buy some Silencia by Forcia because it irritated her. "Sensei," said Sakura. Kakashi hummed back, implying that he had heard his student with the pink hair. "What do we do with the rogue ninjas we bring back to the village?" concluded Sakura. "Well," said Kakashi, "there isn't really a specific procedure. I guess I don't know too much about it, since I am not in the interrogation and torture department, but what I heard from Anko and Ibiki, the leading interrogators there, are that normally we restrain the missing ninjas with special seals that immobilize them and prevent the formation of chakra. The next step would involve you." Naruto concluded, "Physical and mental torture, for Kakashi. They will beat your body to the ground until you are numb all over and cannot feel your body. They will cause pain to you in places that you never thought possible. And finally they will use a technique to torture your mind endlessly until they have the information they want." Sakura inquired curiosity-drivenly, "And if the prisoner dies halfway?" To which Kakashi replied, "Death is no obstacle to them, as long as the head is still intact. We have specialists that can dig inside the brain for information that they require." Sakura appeared a little appalled. "The Yamanakas are experts at that," said Naruko, "especially Inoichi." Sakura pointed to Haku and said, "So what will happen to her?" "I honestly have no idea, Sakura," Kakashi sighed in response. Sakura cheerfully pointed out that Konoha's gates eventually come into view. "Put your illusion up, Naruko," Kakashi said after giving a nod and creating a seal. Naruko's feminine features were completely replaced by masculine ones in a split second. Rewind. Rolling around on his bed in his shirt and boxers, Naruto let out a sigh. The team was exhausted from that mission, and it served as a reminder to all that they had more formidable adversaries who could have eliminated them at any time. They had to become exponentially stronger quickly. He tightened his grip on his chest, where Zabuza had left scar tissue from the stab wound. His soft skin felt rough against it, but there is no way to avoid it. He let out a sigh and tried in vain to fall asleep. His thoughts kept returning to Haku, the prisoner they had returned to Konoha with. She and the Demon Brothers had been questioned for 2 weeks before being released into the ninja community with the stipulation that they serve Konoha faithfully for the rest of their lives and consent to a 6-month probationary period during which they would not be permitted to take the next Chunin exams, which would be held and hosted in Konoha. Meanwhile, a man who was as cold-blooded and wicked as the devil himself was hatching a major scheme deep within the Tea Country, beyond the boundaries of the Fire Country. With his long black hair flying behind him, he strolled through the hallways of his underground base, a smirk adorning his gray face. "Kabuto," he exclaimed behind him. A white-haired man with spectacles knelt down. "How is the mission I asked you to carry out coming along?" "By my reports, Orochimaru-sama," disclosed the man, who was now known as Kabuto, "there are no Mokuton users besides Yamato." Orochimaru gave a nod. He asked his assistant, "How is the Uchiha?" "According to the reports I am receiving, he has unlocked his Sharingan, but not completely," replied Kabuto. Orochimaru grinned more broadly and said, "It doesn't matter, as long as he has unlocked it, I can finish it myself." "Finish the preparation?" asked Orochimaru. "By this time in the not-too-distant future, Konoha will be rubble." After giving a nod, Kabuto vanished. The worst part was that the box, which was supposed to look like a rock, had eye holes cut into it, and Naruto could feel his eyebrows twitching back in Konoha as he was being stalked by a square Bon moving in the middle of the open road. "So," said Naruto aloud, "when are you planning to reveal yourself?" The box responded with a laugh before vanishing in a puff of smoke to reveal a child, perhaps 8 years old, grinning broadly. Since his permanent teeth will soon erupt, Naruto could see that a portion of his teeth were missing. His neck was draped with a blue scarf that touched the ground. The scarf would trail behind him if he moved. A helmet of some kind appeared to be worn over his head, but a section of it was severed to reveal his spiky black hair. The recently unveiled child yelled, "I challenge you to a duel," before lunging in Naruto's direction. The child stumbled and fell flat on his face as the blonde ninja ducked the awkward attack and held out his leg. Naruto said, "Kid, I got training to do," in a deceased tone. "Don't bother me." He went on to say, "I am no kid. I am Sarutobi Konohamaru, future Hokage." Posing as though to demonstrate his superhero status, Konohamaru placed both arms at his waist. "And?" Naruto inquired, a little irritated, "what is it that you want with me?" Just then, Naruto heard a voice in the distance yelling. It said, "Master Grandson. Where are you?" Just 2 seconds later, Konohamaru was joined by a man wearing a blue bandana, long blue pants, and a blue long-sleeved shirt. He hid the glance he was giving Naruto by shifting his sunglasses, but it was too late. Naruto scowled. "Master Grandson," he said in a haughty manner, "what are you doing hanging out with filth such as this? If you want to become Hokage, you have to follow my shortcut training." "No," exclaimed Konohamaru, resisting the man's attempt to pull him away, "I want to challenge Naruto to a duel." "Grandson!" yelled Naruto angrily. Both the man and the child were drawn to it. "How do you know me?" When asked honestly, "I heard a lot about you from grandfather," Konohamaru replied. The man commanded, "Do not talk to this filth." In a desperate cry, Konohamaru exclaimed, "Ebisu-sensei, let me go." The sarcastic statement, "He is so lucky to have a teacher like you," came from Naruto. Through his glasses, Ebisu gave him a glare. "A lesson is needed." Ebisu was insulted by Naruto's sly smile. "Do you think you can take me, an elite ninja of the village, on and win?" Naruto appeared beside him, sitting on his shoulders. In a flash, "Are you sure you are elite? I fought elite before, and you, sir, are no elite." Ebisu was truly astounded by Naruto's ability to move so quickly. He attempted to swipe the boy away, but he was gone by the time his hand got to Naruto's location. Ebisu twisted and turned his body in a desperate attempt to find the blonde, but Naruto was ahead of him. Naruto called out, "Grandson," drawing the attention of both Konohamaru and Ebisu. Astonished by Naruto's closeness, Ebisu staggered, letting the blonde swipe from beneath his feet and landing ass first on the hard earth floor. "Why are you learning from a narrow-minded weakling like him?" laughed Naruto. Ebisu tightened his jaw. He shouted, "I am an elite," and Naruto gave him a stern look. Naruto persisted in making fun of him, asking, "An elite, you say?" Ebisu turned to face Naruto. He couldn't tell what it was, perhaps the sun's angle and the way Ebisu was lying on the ground staring up at him, but Naruto appeared to be wearing a menacing smile. "Being Hokage is my dream," exclaimed Konohamaru. "I want to be the best in the world, then people will acknowledge me not as grandson, but as Sarutobi Konohamaru, Hokage of Konoha." Naruto remarked, "You still didn't answer my question. There are at least 100 more qualified teachers which you can ask help from." According to Konohamaru, grandfather said he was good. "Seriously?" inquired Naruto. "He must be getting old?" "That's rude," exclaimed Ebisu. Naruto's scowl instantly silenced him. Naruto sighed. "You know," he said, "this confrontation has proven something." Ebisu and Konohamaru gave Naruto a questioning glance. Naruto explained, "Konoha is lucky to have Sandaime as Hokage," to their perplexed looks. To get eye level with Ebisu, Naruto squatted down, "Because small-minded judgmental people like you exist far too commonly in this place. You know, to blame people for something they have no say on, no control over, and at the beginning, no idea why they are hunted down like dogs and beaten to a pulp just because they contain something that they didn't know they have." Ebisu was enraged, but Konohamaru was perplexed. Ebisu screamed, "The one that killed thousands, the demon," but was cut off. "Say it," Naruto pushed back. "I dare you." Ebisu came to a sudden halt. Naruto got to his feet. As expected, his venomous spat said, "You are weak, you have the balls to blame me for something I have no control over, but do not have the balls to tell me why." The call was, "Hokage wannabe." Naruto said. The blonde caught Konohamaru's attention. He began by saying, "Your grandfather once told me this. All ninjas of the village possess the will of fire. The will to protect their comrades. The Hokage had the strongest drive of them all, only the strongest-willed people, who desired above all to protect this great village and its inhabitants, no matter how idiotic they may be, regardless of what happens to him, can become Hokage." Konohamaru gave a nod. "The question is," Naruto said, turning his sharp eyes to the youngster, "do you possess the drive to protect this great village?" Konohamaru yelled, "I will show you. With all of his might. I will be the strongest Hokage in history." Naruto grinned. Naruto said, "And you?" Returning his focus to the alleged elite ninja, "Do you know why I have not killed every pathetic villager in this place who thinks like you, a narrow-minded and idiotic ass?" Ebisu boastfully said, "The village ninja will stop you before you can touch anyone." "The ninja of this village," smirking, Naruto said, "can kill me easily, true." Ebisu grinned haughtily at this. The haughty grin vanished from his face as Naruto spoke. "But I will have taken at least half of the pathetic villagers, women and children, and whoever that gets in my way." "You wouldn't dare," replied Ebisu, his lips trembling. "I could," retorted Naruto, "starting with you, elite." Ebisu tightened his jaw. "According to Naruto, I could, you know, but I won't. I promised the third after all, and it's not like I hate this village. However, its inhabitants leave something to be desired." Naruto turned and walked away, "Which is why I said, the village is lucky to have Sandame as Hokage." A girlish voice called out to Naruto, "Naruto?" Gazing at her, Naruto asked sharply, "Sakura? What are you doing here? Is something wrong?" Sakura squeezed her nose bridge. "We have been looking for you for the last 20 minutes. You're late for the team meeting session." Naruto questioned, a little taken aback, "Even Sensei is there?" Sakura gave a nod. With a sheepish tone, Naruto said, "Let's go then." Sakura nodded and let out a sigh. Naruto faced Konohamaru once more. Naruto reminded him, "Remember this, grandson. There are no shortcuts in life. Work hard and be determined. Only then do you stand a chance of achieving your dream." With interest, Sakura inquired, "What was that about?" "A cheerful, nothing much really," was Naruto's response. "Just settling some idiotic problem which I have." Konoha village is a serene location. Kabuto viewed it from a tall structure. His white bangs tickled his face as the wind swept them. He grinned. Soon, he thought, this place is going to be destroyed soon. It's been 6 days since Konohamaru first met Naruto. He was determined to prove to the blonde that he was more than just the third's grandson. He had what it took to become the greatest Hokage in history. He is running around the village today with his friends Udon and Moegi, developing their stamina and preparing for other things like avoiding rubber kunai and shuriken. Konohamaru bumped into the black figure in front of him because he was too preoccupied with the projectiles his friends were hurling behind him to notice it. He collapsed onto his posterior. As the figure said, "Watch where you are going, brat," in the following second, the aforementioned black figure roughly lifted Konohamaru by the front of his shirt, causing him to become 3 feet above the ground. Konohamaru looked closely at the one supporting him. He had a tall, bandaged structure strapped to his back, wearing what appeared to be black overalls, with only a wad of brown hair showing through the bandages. His face caught Konohamaru's attention. The thick layer of war paint he wore obscured his vision. "Let me go, makeup man," yelled Konohamaru. The figure said, "Do you want to die, brat?" "Be careful," said a voice that had just arrived. "You are holding the Hokage's grandson." The figure raised its head. Naruto and Sakura were sitting on a nearby tree branch, chatting away, when Sasuke looked up at him. "Kankuru," said a different voice as he looked up at the tree from which the voice was coming. The figure in the black clothing stiffened. There was a redhead, stoic, carrying a huge gourd. "Release him." Kankuru started, "Gaara, Iya," but was instantly silenced by a glance from Gaara, who was revealed as the redhead. Naruto yelled, "Sasuke, let's go," and he suddenly materialized next to Kankuru, causing him to trip. Gaara was a little taken aback, but he remained silent from his treetop. Sasuke grinned as he moved to the same tree where Gaara was. Sakura yelled, "Sensei is waiting for us," from next to Naruto. Sasuke said, "I'm coming," as he touched down next to his teammates. Sakura asked, "What are you doing here anyway? Your headbands indicate that you are sand ninjas, but even allied ninjas aren't allowed into the village without consent." A female voice said, "We are here for the Chunin exams," coming from behind the two boys. When Naruto looked over, He saw a blonde woman with a sturdy build but still attractive features. Her hair was tied in what he could only describe as 4 flower-like patterns. On the back of her head a massive battle fan was fastened to her back. She presented Konoha's formal approval, which permitted them to remain in the village during the tests. Chunin exams? Thought Sakura, we haven't heard anything from sensei? Tamari, Konkaru, exclaimed Gaara, the redhead, we're leaving. After nodding, the girl and the boy in the black jacket walked away. Wait, said Sasuke. Give me your name. When Tamari asked, who? Sasuke gestured toward Gaara. Sabaku no Gaara, now give me yours, Uchiha Sasuke. Gaara blinked once, then he turned to leave. He is strong, said Naruto, very strong. Sasuke gave a nod. Come on, ushered Sakura. We have to meet sensei soon. Kakashi was in the training area, waiting. It made no difference that his students were late. For the first time, it allowed him to reflect on their progress together. He thought they worked well together, but there are still some sharp edges that need to be smoothed out. Kakashi was taken aback by their performance against Zabuza, but Naruto nearly lost his life as a result. Despite their severe injuries, they quickly became a cohesive team and supported one another at all times. Kakashi was pleased by this. He played with the official forms to take the Chunin exams in his hands. He questioned whether they were prepared. Sakura waved, Sensei, as she became visible to Kakashi. Sasuke and Naruto followed closely behind. When his students showed up, Kakashi grinned. He keeps reflecting on how they have developed as a team. They were ready, he decided. Starting with, I called you here, Kakashi said, to let you know that I am recommending you to enter in the Chunin exams that will be held in Konoha this year. Each of the 3 pupils was paying close attention. I took this long to tell you because I wasn't able to decide whether you were ready or not, Kakashi said. He examined the papers he was holding. A moment later, he extended them to his students. After saying, but now, I believe you will do fine in the exams, Kakashi grinned. When the Genins got their papers, they grinned. They would undoubtedly do exceptionally well on the tests. Sakura pumped her fists in the air and remarked, I suppose it's time to up our training then. Kakashi nodded, and all Sasuke could do was smile. His students were beaming with happiness, and he thought, they're going to do well on the tests. It would be a huge understatement to say that the Chunin exams are boring at the moment. Naruto and his companions are engaged in combat with a group from the mist, who are donning gas masks, yellow overalls, and goggles. However, they weren't in this forest of death just a short while ago. Since they had to persevere and avoid being caught more than 5 times to pass the first test, they did so with relative ease. It appeared from the people they met that the exams would actually be interesting. Rewind. Sakura was at the gates, waiting. It was Sasuke who arrived first. Since Naruto wasn't there, she spoke to break the ice. Sasuke-kun, calls Sakura. Sasuke cocked his head to look into her eyes. She inquired, what kind of girls do you fancy, just out of curiosity? Sasuke inhaled deeply. He considered not responding to the question, but he decided to comply since he assumed she would prod until she had an answer. Sasuke gave an honest response, saying, I like girls who are strong, independent, and are not afraid to show who they are. There's no need for dieting or makeup or whatever. I like people the way they are. Naruto decided to show up at this time abruptly next to them. Naruto teased, who? Sasuke has a taste for girls? Which made Sakura blush a little and Sasuke twitch. Kakashi showed up, grinning at his group with his signature grin. I'm here to wish you all good luck, said the man. I know you will do well in the exams. Go in and make me a proud man. His group gave a nod. They then made their way into the exam rooms. They entered and proceeded to the room indicated by the signs. Naruto inquired, what room was it again? Sakura glanced at the instructions and replied, room 309, I think. When Sasuke said, up the stairs then, on their way to the tests, they encountered numerous genin as they ascended the stairs. Amid the ascent, they came across something. Outside the door stood a small group of individuals bearing the number 309. A girlish voice said, let us in. We're here for the exams. Naruto gave the girl a look. Her hair was held up in 2 buns, but he was unable to see her face. She was dressed in a pink Chinese shirt with no sleeves that fit her body perfectly. It revealed the contours of her growing body. A guy next to her shouted, yes. In the name of youth, let us in. His haircut was bowl-shaped, as if someone had smacked a bowl on his head and then cut around it, but Naruto was unable to see his face again. He was dressed in orange leg warmers and green spandex. The sense of style made Naruto shudder. The guard on the door yelled, weaklings cannot be allowed to take the exam, and easily pushed the green spandex guy away. Sakura muttered, we're on the 2nd floor, there's no way that's 309. Naruto urged his teammates on, saying, "Keep moving, the fewer opponents we have, the better." They eventually saw the actual room 309. After ascending the stairs to the third floor, there were hundreds of genin in the room. When they walked in, they all came from various villages, including rock, sand, and mist. A voice said, "Oh, you guys made it." Naruto and his companions turned to confront Kiba, Shino, and Hinata's team. The voice said, "Forehead girl, I thought you'd never come." In a girlish tone, Sakura turned around and saw the Ino, Shikamaru, and Choji team. Sakura remarked, "Of course we made it. I could never lose to you." "Hey, Shikamaru," Naruto said, giving his longtime friend a fist bump. Shikamaru grinned. Naruto surveyed his environment. Sasuke was leaning against the wall next to Shino, silent, while Ino was talking to Sakura, shyly hiding behind Ino. Hinata gazed out at Naruto. Kiba, however, was trembling and shaky. When Hinata first saw him, she assumed he was shaking with terror. However, he let out a battle cry a moment later. He exclaimed, "Yosha, I am Inuzuka Kiba, and I will beat you all in the exams." Aloud, so loud that everyone in the room was staring at him. A voice walked up to the group and said, "You might as well have painted a target on the back of your head and wore a neon sign that reads, 'I am here.'" When they looked around, they noticed an older boy coming toward them. His long white hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and he wore spectacles. Bang's headband was partially covered. Shikamaru remarked, "You must be a veteran based on your age." "Yay, I am taking the exam for the 7th time," he acknowledged. The eyes of the group grew wide. Ino questioned, "Are the exams that hard?" Kabuto chuckled, "It really tests your resolve as a ninja." Naruto inquired inquisitively, "And you approached us because?" "As a veteran," Kabuto replied, "I wanted to give you some advice, and also to share some information which might help you in the exams." He produced a gray card deck. "These," he said while demonstrating the deck to them, "are information cards regarding every person in the exam which I have gathered over the past 7 years. They also include information on your generation." It aroused Sasuke's interest. "Do you have information on Sabaku no Gara?" After moving around his deck a little, Kabuto picked out a card. The card poofed when he spun it with his index finger. "Let's see," Kabuto said, starting to read the card. 50D rank missions, 12C rank missions, and 1B rank mission, which he finished without a scratch. Sasuke was amazed. "There seems to be no information available on his skills," Kabuto went on to say. "Requesting Hyuga Neji and Rock Lee," Naruto said. Sakura asked, "Who are they?" And Sasuke returned the questioning glance. Naruto gestured to the group that had just entered, which included the man with the spandex bowl haircut and the girl wearing a pink Chinese sleeveless shirt. The boy next to him had long hair that reached his waist, with the ends tied up to keep it from flying in all directions. He was dressed in dark brown shorts and a beige shirt. "Hyuga Neji," said Naruto, "was the rookie of the year before Sasuke, and Rock Lee is his teammate." When Ino questioned, "What makes them so special?" Naruto gestured to Kabuto. He read the 2 cards after spinning them. Hyuga Neji completed 150D rank missions, 45C rank missions, and 2B ranked missions. He is considered to be the genius of the Hyuga household, with far more potential than anyone in the last 10 years or so. Sakura questioned, "And Rock Lee?" "Taijutsu specialist," was Kabuto's response. "He doesn't seem to be able to use ninjutsu, but his taijutsu is among the best in Konoha's ninjas." One voice called out, "Excuse me." 3 newcomers appeared as the small group turned. One was a man with a metal gadget fastened to his arm and numerous bandages. The other, with his headband and yellow shirt, appeared to be quite normal. His hair was spiky. Their final teammate was a girl in camouflage pants and a sleeveless dark green shirt. She was simple but gorgeous in her simplicity. She had black hair that reached her waist. Her neck was adorned with a scarf. Smugly, he said, "Do you have any information on us?" Naruto examined their headgear. In a whisper, Naruto said, "A team from the newly formed Otogakure no Sato." Kabuto gave a nod. "They are very new. I have no reliable information concerning that village," he replied. With his left arm swung toward Kabuto in a sweep, the bandaged boy exclaimed, "Then allow us to impart some important information." The arm was attached to a metallic device. Kabuto cleverly ducked back, but he apparently stumbled and fell, throwing up. He boasted as he displayed his gadget, "My gauntlet is special. It emits sound waves that can mess with your balance and knock you out." At present, Naruto started, drawing their focus. "You are in Konoha. Attacking a Konoha ninja in front of us unprovoked is not a very wise move." Naruto and his companions then started to encircle the sound crew. Kabuto was cared for by Ino and Hinata. The girl declared, "We are guests in your village. You treat your guests with such disrespect." The girl shuddered as Naruto glared at her. You have not behaved like a guest. You attacked our comrade without reason. It should have been enough reason to evict you from our lands." Before snapping, the bandaged man's eyes twitched. "Die." Before he could make contact with Naruto, he launched himself at him, only to discover that his gauntlet had been grabbed by another hand. A husky voice asked, "Do you want to be disqualified before the exam starts?" As the draft from his quick arrival subsided, the group turned to see a blue trench coat settling 3 claw marks ran diagonally across his severely scarred face. He was stocky, muscular, and enormous. Naruto saw the metallic device start to dent as he applied a firm squeeze. He proclaimed, "I am the exam proctor. Now proceed to the other room before I decide to disqualify you all." The end of the flashback though was the initial test. Since it only tested the ability to obtain information covertly and the will and bravery to proceed in the face of danger, it was not worth much to discuss. However, the second exam was different. Training Ground 44, also known as the Forest of Death, was the location where they were to take their exams, according to the instructor, Mitarashi Anko, a ridiculously attractive woman with purple hair, a fishnet shirt covering her torso, and an absurdly short skirt as part of her outfit, which included a brown trench coat. It was given that name due to the high death rate in the forest as well as its dangerous residents, which includes centipedes, giant snakes, and other poisonous or lethal animals if they have escaped at all. The majority of participants who enter the forest do not come out unscathed. In order to pass this test, the team had to reach a tower in the middle of the forest in 5 days and possess both the Heaven and Earth scrolls. Sasuke signaled to run at that moment. Sakura and Naruto nodded before heading for the trees the adversary pursued. Sakura ducked beneath one of the approaching shuriken and yelled, "Incoming!" The shuriken struck the air before becoming embedded in a tree, while Naruto and Sasuke dispersed to the left and right. A second later, they regrouped and resumed their escape. Sakura announced, "2 incoming water jutsus." Perched atop a tree, Naruto and Sasuke swiftly slid their hands through seals. Kaden. Gukakyu. Kaden. Enden. In order to meet the incoming water techniques, 2 fireballs burned their way through the air. The methods clashed, canceling each other out in a hiss of white smoke and steam. Perhaps less than a second passed. Sasuke and Naruto nodded as their gazes locked. Naruto and Sasuke waited for the sounds of their enemies landing on trees while the smoke hung in the air. They flashed their hands through another set of seals, both ending in the tiger seal, as soon as they heard the desired sound. Kaden. Gukakyu. Kaden. Enden. The fire spread swiftly through the atmosphere. The smoke prevented the enemy from seeing anything. The target was not 3 feet from the fire. Once it had burned past the smoke, the other 2 were stunned and suddenly burned to a crisp. But one managed to get away by deftly leaping as far away from the fire as he could. In the midst of the third member's relief and surprise, Sakura materialized behind him and gave him a good whack that left him dumbfounded. She then bound his hands and legs into one bundle, making him essentially worthless. Disappointed, she looked in his pouch for the scroll but couldn't find it. Sakura remarked, "I think you guys burned the scroll," with a hint of annoyance. As Naruto put it, "Let's hunt for another one." Sasuke remarked, "We don't exactly have a choice." Sakura and Naruto both nodded. Just 2 seconds after they reached a consensus, a tremendous gust of wind tore through the trees, striking all 3 of them and sending them hurtling out of their current location. Trees interrupted their flight, which was somewhat fortunate for Sakura and Sasuke, but not so fortunate for the blonde far from his teammates. The wind struck him, sending him into a giant python's jaws. Sakura and Sasuke looked at the enemy after they had recovered from the harsh impact. Sakura had little idea what gender the enemy was. However, because it had more masculine features than feminine ones, she assumed it was a guy. Sasuke gave him a look. He always had a sly smile on his face, as if he were plotting something nefarious against the young people in front of him. His eyes, which were slitted in yellow, revealed what little sanity he still had before being nearly consumed by the chaos and insanity all around him. "Sasuke, Sakura, be careful," said. Sakura gave a nod. Sasuke looked down abruptly and saw that his torso was heavily bleeding. Sakura's head was rolling on the ground. When he turned to her for assistance, his legs failed to support his weight, and he collapsed on the ground, clutching his torso as he fell next to Sakura's bloody head. The enigmatic adversary laughed as he screamed. After a second, everything was as it had been when Sasuke touched his torso. He noticed that there was no blood. When he looked at Sakura, he saw that she was still alive but in a similar state of fear and terror. The enigmatic man laughed menacingly. "Wait," was all Sasuke could manage to utter. The man came to a stop. Sasuke stumbled. "Take our scroll," he said, "and please leave." The man chuckled. "As expected from you, Uchiha Sasuke," he said. "A wise choice knowing you cannot defeat me." In the end, Sasuke was able to retrieve the scroll from his pouch and throw it to the man grinning. The man reached for it, but it vanished from view before he could touch it a moment later. The man lost eye contact with the two frozen ninjas in front of him after receiving a forceful kick to the side of his jaw. Holding his jaw where the kick landed, he staggered back. Naruto screamed, "Run!" as he fell between the enemy and his teammates. That was sufficient to jolt them out of their reverie. They left the scene as swiftly as possible, so they didn't need to be reminded twice. They were so focused on escaping for their lives that they overlooked something crucial, assuming they had all escaped unharmed. Sakura and Sasuke were currently fleeing from the odd foe for a while. They traveled as quickly as they possibly could. The air was suddenly filled with a painful, high-pitched scream. Sakura and Sasuke became aware of their absence. The stranger appeared in front of them just as they were about to turn around, but they were stopped. Sakura and Sasuke both gasped. With an unusually long tongue, the man was choking their blonde teammate in his hand. Sasuke gazed incredulously at his vanquished teammate. He couldn't understand what he saw. His teammate's long blonde hair was tied in pigtails, and he lacked masculine features. She wore an open jacket that showed off her torso because her shirt was torn in two. Fortunately, her modesty was preserved by a black sports bra. There was nothing wrong with her battle shorts because they were largely intact, but there were etches in her midriff. 5 individual seals surrounded the swirl, which Sasuke could see encircled by 2 large seals. "Naruko!" exclaimed Sakura as the man held her with his long, purplish tongue. She noticed that the blonde was unconscious, her limbs drooping limply in midair. Sasuke looked closely at the man who was supporting his female teammate. He had a very deathly pale face, however, until he properly focused his eyes on his face. It appeared that his skin had 2 tones. Then he let out a gasp. His face was covered in a layer of melted skin. His eyes were slid and yellow. Like the eyes of a snake, he had a sly, malevolent smile on his lips, as though he took pleasure in the teen's ordeal. He started, "Uchiha Sasuke," and his voice made them both wince. "I have come for you." He casually threw Naruko in their direction. Sakura moved to catch her as she flew through the air. She managed to do so, and the additional weight of another person caused her to land hard on her legs. Thankful that she had a pulse, she checked the blondes. Even if it wasn't as strong as usual, it was still better than a teammate who died. Sakura attended to the Naruko while Sasuke moved to cover for both teammates. Now is not the time to question Naruto's gender. "We must get out," he thought. "How is she?" Sasuke inquired, keeping his gaze fixed on the unfamiliar man. "We need to leave as soon as possible," Sakura replied, alive but weak. Smiling, "First we have to escape from this freak," Sasuke said. Normally, Mitarashi Anko was a submissive woman. Despite her alluring appearance, deadly gaze, and accompanying kunai-licking antics, she was typically submissive to those who did not offend her or her friends. But on this particular day, she is hurrying to the heart of the Forest of Death, where she is serving as the proctor for the Chunin exams that are currently underway. A group of Anbu discovered several Kusagakura genin corpses with their faces melted off of them just 20 minutes ago. An Inuzuka Anbu member had commented that the corpses had a strong snake, blood, and subtle sedative odor, which made him a little nauseous. Anko let out a gasp when snakes were mentioned. Only one name sprang to mind, shouting behind her. She hurried to the Forest of Death to inform the Hokage that Orochimaru had entered the village without any delay. The Anbu took off. Naruko leaned against a tree and gasped. She had to keep her head closed as she struggled to catch her breath and steady her ever-blurring vision due to a gash on her head that was leaking blood into her eyes. At her side, Sakura was panting, and she could see several bruises on her hands. As they watched, the strange mana who had introduced himself as one of the fabled Sannin, Orochimaru, held Sasuke up by the collar of his shirt and sank his fangs into the teen's neck. Sasuke screamed in agony as Orochimaru injected the young Uchiha's body with his tainted chakra. Black marks resembling 3 outfacing tomos appeared on the victim's pale skin as soon as his snake-like fangs disappeared, clinging to his neck in the hopes that it would somehow lessen the pain as it gripped his very being from the inside out. Sasuke screamed in agony. Naruko whispered, "Save him," to Sakura. "Hurry while the snake man is distracted. Run, after that I will handle him." Sakura's bewildered expression was directed at her blonde teammate. Sakura resolutely stated, "We can't abandon you here." Naruko grinned. "Go," said Naruko. "He needs medical attention. That hickey can't be anything good." Sakura gave a headshake. Naruko glared at her sharply. Naruko ushered once more, saying, "Go. We need to escape." "I will escape better alone. I will escape and find you all, I promise." Sakura reluctantly gave a nod. Naruko said, "I'll divert his attention. Seize the moment." Meanwhile, Orochimaru was laughing uncontrollably while he threw Sasuke to the ground. He had achieved his goals for his long-term strategy. It was finished. Both short and long-term plans were put into action. He is a contented man in every way. He actually didn't realize the two Kunoichi were planning an escape until it was too late because he was so engrossed in his own world. Naruko got up and leaned against the tree. She didn't realize it, but the Snake Man's treatment of her seriously damaged her chakra. She wasn't sure if her jutsus would turn out as well as they should because she couldn't really mold chakra properly. Nevertheless, it appeared that their only option for getting out was limited. The strange man would be restrained by Naruko, enabling them to flee. Although she had some ideas about how to go about it, actually carrying them out was a completely different story. She reasoned that this was preferable to dying in action. She then mustered all of her strength and leapt in the direction of Sasuke and the Snake Man, surprising them. This gave Naruto the opportunity to fulfill a desire she had since witnessing Maeda Guy smash a tree during training. Konohagokiri Senpu. Orochimaru was briefly stunned when the spinning back kick struck his face and sent him flying back to a nearby tree. She yelled, "Run!" to Sakura, who used the opportunity. Naruko was about to speak to seize Sasuke by the foot and fled through the treetops. Deeper into the woods, Orochimaru felt something wet adhere to his torso as he began to recover from the super kick he had received. Still a little dazed, looking down, he saw that he was tied to the tree by a rope that appeared to be made of water. He grinned. He thought, "This girl is resourceful." Despite the fact that she had him bound, Naruko found his smile to be a little unsettling. Fearing that he would get away, she gripped the rope ends firmly in her hands. When he said, "My failed experiment," Naruko took notice. Naruko pondered his topic of conversation. He went on after noticing the expression on the young blonde's face. "I captured you once for an experiment since you were the Jinchuriki. I thought that the experiment would yield better results compared to a normal person," he said with a smile. "It seems I was wrong." Naruko ignored what he had to say since she couldn't recall such a thing. She came to the conclusion that he was lying to divert her attention and get away. She couldn't be more untruthful. Sweat beads rolled to the bridge of Naruko's nose and then fell from her forehead. Even though Orochimaru had only been bound for 2 minutes, Naruko thought it had been forever. The fact that he was merely standing there grinning carelessly annoyed her. She was really unnerved by it. Orochimaru wondered, how long can she hold out? After what I did to her, her chakra ought to be sealed. As Orochimaru had predicted, Naruko was growing weary as the bonds gradually melted. Her vision was becoming increasingly blurry. Before, it was only occasionally blurry, but now she was unable to see clearly. It was an indication that she was running extremely low on vitality. The ropes soon melted away, and she found herself on her knees, attempting to steady her failing vision. She thought, "Crap, I'm finished." When the ropes melted away and Orochimaru was released from the bonds, he yawned loudly and stretched his arms. "Just so you know, I could have destroyed those pathetic reasons you called ropes anytime I wanted to," Orochimaru chided. Naruko's face was shocked as she gazed at him. As he approached Naruko, he remarked, "I already accomplished my goal here. I just wanted to have some fun and pastime." As Naruko sensed another presence move in between her and Orochimaru, she relaxed. Eventually, she gave in to the darkness, but not before noticing a brown trench coat settling from the draft and blocking her view of Mitarashi Anko's gorgeous, creamy legs. Naruko eventually succumbed to unconsciousness after that. Sakura, as most people would say, was just an ordinary girl. Without the headband she wore, most people would have assumed she was a civilian because she lacked any special abilities and no discernible talent that had yet to show. She was referred to by many names, including cute, sweet, and kind, but never anything other than her appearance. But on this particular day, she was going to use the word loyal to further characterize herself. She was ashamed to leave Naruko in Orochimaru's care, so she hid Sasuke, who had been rendered unconscious by the Agonia, in a cave that was heavily fortified with booby traps before going back to retrieve Naruko. She hid behind the tree, waiting for the right moment to seize her, but nothing happened for a while after Naruko bound the fabled Sannin, so she didn't see any opening. Orochimaru did not decide to take action until a few minutes later, when she saw a brown trench coat with a blob of purplish hair tied up in a wild flowery pattern. She swung the suiban toward the unconscious blonde and caught it around her wrist, erecting it in her hand like a fishing rod. She yanked it hard to bring her in, but an escape was an escape. It didn't need to be tasteful. Sakura took the blonde and vanished from view while Anko and Orochimaru were busy. The exams were not going as well as they had hoped. Although they anticipated difficult obstacles, they were currently battling for their lives at this point. Sakura was the only team member who had not been hurt. She had to exercise caution now. It was her grave responsibility to keep an eye on her teammates while they slept and, ideally, recovered enough to leave the forest from the safety of her cave. She observed the sky as it blazed with lightning and thundered. She can only wait now. Sakura was not accustomed to standing guard for long periods of time, particularly when she was also worn out. A person can become exhausted from standing guard for 12-hour shifts for more than 3 days. She used everything available to her, keeping only the essentials in case of unexpected attacks and such, and had the booby trapped in the immediate area. She turned her attention to her teammates. Sasuke and Naruko were both unconscious, but something wasn't quite right. Sasuke had a pained expression on his face even in La La Land. It didn't appear promising. His face was covered in copious amounts of sweat that kept trickling down his cheeks while she was at it. She made sure to keep her teammates fed by eating and drinking from whatever rations they had. Sakura sensed someone coming and braced herself for combat. She pulled a kunai and a few shuriken from her holster and affixed herself to the entrance walls, trying to blend in with the darkness against the light. A booby trap went off when she heard footsteps approaching and then heard an explosion outside. Her teammates needed to be protected. Despite having been sealed into hosts 3 times, Kyuubi still regarded himself as a powerful entity. He was happy that there was no way to kill him. It was an annoyance to be sealed into a human, but he just had to wait. After all, he was immortal, and whenever the Jinchuriki died, people tried to reseal him as someone else, which provided an escape route. He came very close. All he could do was wait, but there was something intriguing about this host. There was a massive tree of epic proportions beyond his cage, close enough to keep him in sight but far enough away that he could not do anything to it. For years, he had seen that tree, which was the result of Shodai Hokage's DNA being forcibly inserted into Naruko's body. He had recognized the alien substance that had entered the human body's internal operations, and he watched in wonder as the alien DNA fought the body's natural defenses. It's more like curiosity than awe. He eventually grew tired of the two fighting and made the decision to stop them and combine them into one entity. He did that through this. He ensured the strength of his container. He alone was responsible for ensuring that the Shodai's DNA seamlessly merged with Naruko's system, giving her access to the Shodai's power. But because Kyuubi was an Uzumaki, a distant relative of the Senjus, she benefited from the genetics of the blonde container. It had been so much simpler, but given Orochimaru's desire for power, Sandaime decided it was too risky to be loose. Ultimately, it and Naruko's recollection of such a power were sealed up. However, it remained. She has it in her body. Then something had occurred. Once bound by several chains, the massive tree was holding the powers at bay by reaching out from the enormous paper in the middle of its trunk. However, it appears that some of the chains, more precisely, half of Tama, fell to the ground, partially submerged by the water that was on the ground, as a result of an interfering snake man. The main chain, which held the tree to the ground, was still in place, though. It simply indicates that the extension used to enclose the powers and memories was deteriorating. In any case, Kyuubi reasoned, it was a weak seal. Fuinjutsu was not Hiruzen's specialty. The memories and powers would eventually find their way into his container. Kyuubi frequently questioned why he was so helpful to this container. This container seemed different in some ways, but it didn't happen with his other two. He could sense that he was here to accomplish that, and that something earth-shattering was going to happen in the foreseeable future, though it was difficult to explain why. Unconscious, Sasuke twisted and writhed in pain. Sweat soaked his shirt and adorned his face. Even in his unconscious state, he was experiencing the effects of the painful throb in his neck. Give in to the darkness. He could not stop hearing this voice. Take revenge on those who have wronged you. I can assist you. The blonde girl next to him, who is still unconscious, is unaware that purple chakra has begun to emerge around the Uchiha. Marks appeared on his face as the tendrils encircled his body. His face was now partially covered in markings that resembled black ember. He got to his feet, his Sharingan burning wild in his eyes. Sakura was fighting against her enemy's grip on her, panting. Tsuchi-kin, Otogakure Genin, was holding her in place while she sat on the floor with one hand painfully twisted behind her back. Her other hand was violently dislocated from its socket and fell limp at her side. Next to her dislocated arm was a pool of water that served as her suiben. Behind her, her other two teammates were occupied with holding Sakura's fellow Konoha members to a standstill in combat. In the battle against Rock Lee, a taijutsu expert of Konoha Genin, and the Ino Shika Cho combination of the current heir to the three esteemed clansa, it was Zaku, who used airwaves that radiated from his palms, and his teammate Dosu, a Genin wearing a metal gauntlet that could stun his opponents with sound waves. Akamichi Choji, Shikamaru's best friend and a formidable ninja, Nara Shikamaru, Naruko's village friend and genius with an IQ of over 200, and Yamanaka Ino, the team's blonde beauty who can take over someone else's mind to control their body. Rock Lee was already dead after failing at his attempt to use Omat Renge, his double-edged sword technique, leaving him hurt and unable to move. The remaining sound genin was then left to be handled by the trio of Ino, Shika, and Cho. They saw their teammate Kin being thrown into a nearby tree just as they were ready to attack. Ino gasped as she looked over and saw Sasuke. Tendrils of dark purple chakra coiled around him like snakes and floated around him like fire, and he was entirely covered in markings of black ember. He gave a menacing laugh. This power. He surveyed his surroundings. Sakura was wounded, but she was free. One of her hands was dislocated. It hung limp from her shoulder. Her face and body were covered in cuts and bruises, and although her clothes were torn in some places, they fortunately did not expose anything inappropriate. "Sakura," he said in a malevolent manner, "did they do this to you?" It was the first time Sakura felt fear. All she could do was nod foolishly. Sasuke vanished from her view abruptly. Dosu was flung to the ground and landed next to Kin at the base of a tree. He asked the other Otogakure genin, "Did you break her arm?" He grinned with assurance. "It was me, all right. What are you going to do about it?" Without saying a word, Sasuke lunged forward, flashing behind him in a tainted black flash, and kicked behind his knees, knocking him to the ground. Holding the genin's arms behind him, he pressed his boot into Zaku's back. Sasuke said, "Since you broke hers, I will do the same to you." As he started to apply pressure to his back despite Zaku's cries for Sasuke to stop, the Uchiha continued to exert more effort. Then, with a sickening pop, everyone in the room heard Zaku's arms being violently pulled out of their sockets. The shock and pain caused him to faint. He looked around at everyone and asked, "Who is next?" Shikamaru and his group were already getting ready to flee. Someone said, "What is that taint on you, Uchiha?" From the trees. Rock Lee grinned as he looked up. He said, "Neji, Tenten, there you are, clad in dark greenish, nearly black trousers and a pink Chinese-style tank top." The girl leapt from the trees and proceeded to examine her teammate. "Lee, you okay?" she inquired. While examining his injuries, he nodded in reply. His name was called Hyuga Neji by Sasuke. Then he gave an evil laugh. "Genius prodigy, do you have the challenge I seek?" Neji clenched his fist but remained silent. He had more important tasks to complete than proving himself to a novice. Between them, there was silence, which was broken by a moan. Dosu and Kin had woken up and gasped when they saw their defeated teammate. Without hesitation, Sasuke leapt to his feet, trying to land on both sound ninjas. In order to avoid the insane raven-haired genin, they both swiftly ducked to the side and leapt as far as they could. Sasuke disappeared and reappeared behind Kin, choking and strangling her with his hands around her throat. Dosu advanced swiftly, rushing forward and preparing his gauntlet for action. However, Sasuke had already moved in front of him and forcefully slammed his foot down on his shoulder, sending him crashing face first into the ground. Before he could begin the technique, the girl was frantically attempting to get him to loosen his grip on her throat. While he was still holding her in a chokehold, he landed on the hard ground after giving Dosu a solid kick that sent him flying back. He muttered to himself, "This power." As he applied more pressure to the black-haired sound ninja, he was choking her eyes, and lack of effort showed that she was barely conscious. He grinned as he glanced at his free hand. The chakra's dark purple tendrils shifted more forcefully, seemingly giving him even more power. Sakura had long since been rescued by Ino and her teammates from the open field and had taken refuge behind a bush. While caring for her broken arm, Ino was actually afraid of what she witnessed the Uchiha doing and what would happen to Sakura's arm. Other than wrapping the arm in a sling, she had no idea what to do. Choji and Shikamaru watched as Sasuke played with his victim. Neji leaned against the tree trunk on top of the branch he was standing on, and Tenten stood guard over Lee in case something happened. Dosu kept getting kicked by Sasuke. Kin had long since lost consciousness and had been thrown aside by Sasuke. Dosu moaned as he felt Sasuke's boot against his skull. As he stood over his vanquished body, he felt two hands, one on his shoulder and one around his waist, just as he was ready to apply pressure and crush his opponent. Sakura begged, "Stop, Sasuke-kun," from behind him, one hand firmly gripping his waist while the other was restrained in a sling in front of her. "Please, just stop." From his hiding place, Shikamaru observed the sudden disappearance of the tainted energy. As simple as that. Shaking, Sasuke dropped to his knees and stared at his hand. "What was Iya?" he stumbled to say, joking. "Welcome back." Naruko gave Sasuke a gentle shoulder squeeze. Sasuke grinned in response, suggesting that it worked. Her other hand automatically covered her navel, which was the area that hurt the most from the last battle. Naturally, this left her top exposed, allowing the majority of people to see that she was a girl, not that her long hair and short battle-hot pants were concealing anything. Shikamaru called out, "Yo!" Emerging from his hiding place. As she glanced around, Naruko muttered a small curse. Her secret would eventually come to light because there were so many Konoha ninjas in the area. Ino pointed to Naruko and said, "Sakura, who is the blonde?" Shikamaru responded, "You're so dense, Ino," which caused her platinum blonde teammate to give him a stern look. "It's Naruto." Ino slammed his teeth into the floor. "You're joking." Shikamaru grinned. "I can recognize those eyes and face anywhere, isn't that right, Choji?" Choji grinned and nodded in reply as she hobbled over to the pineapple-headed Nara and Choji. Naruko grinned and asked, "How am I not surprised you can deduce that easily?" "Man, we grew up together," Choji put in response. "How can we not recognize our close friend?" Naruko began to say, "I'm sorry for keeping this from you, but Shikamaru's hand interrupted her. When he said, "Don't apologize, we know you had your reasons, we can wait until you're ready." Naruko mumbled a small thank you and bowed slightly in response. Choji and Shikamaru simply grinned. The Konoha ninja were interrupted by a moan when he woke up from the beating. Dosu rubbed his head. He shook off the grogginess and lightheadedness brought on by the beating he had received and reoriented himself. He wished he had stayed out cold when he opened his eyes. Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruko were all staring at him, encircling him like a wounded animal that was about to be killed. Naruko joked, "Deja vu much?" in reference to the moment when Konoha ninjas surrounded him in the waiting area. "Wait." He raised his arms in defense and was able to quickly escape. "Hear me out." The ninjas from Konoha hesitated. Sasuke said, "Speak quickly, before we change our minds." Dosu gave a nod. "My team and I," he said, gesturing to the two sound ninjas who were unconscious, "were ordered by Orochimaru to kill you," he concluded, gesturing directly to Sasuke. "Orochimaru?" Ino exclaimed abruptly, "the legendary Sannin gone rogue?" Naruko swore they were still there, but she forgot. "He and us had a little incident," Naruko replied, holding onto her navel where her seal should be more robust. Sakura gestured to Dosu to go on. "So he ordered us to kill you, but never mentioned to us about meeting you here," Dosu went on. "Which means he could have easily killed you without all the fuss of sending in the three sound ninjas," Shikamaru said. "I'd wager he used these guys as pawns to test your power." As she squeezed the bridge of her nose, Naruko began, "The problem now is, what do we do with them?" When Dosu said, "I have a proposition," they took notice. "Let us leave alive, and we will leave our scroll." Then Dosu reached into his pouch and pulled out the scroll. Earth was the name of the scroll. The three glanced at one another to get their thoughts, but when none of them spoke, they shrugged. Sasuke simply picked up the scroll. Dosu interpreted that as consent, snatched his teammates by the snatches, and vanished into the forest. "Hunting's over," said Sakura. "Let's head to the tower to rest. If I'm correct, we have both scrolls." Naruko, "Do you want to put your disguise up?" Naruko gave a headshake. "That snake man did something to me. I can't mold enough chakra for anything." Naruko tried to hide her feminine appearance as a demonstration, but it didn't work out. She had a masculine half of her face and a feminine half. One part of her torso, one hand, and one leg were one gender, and the other was another. It was strange to observe. Naruko let it go after a few seconds. Naruko remarked, "I doubt I can use any ninjutsu in this state." Instead, Sakura said, "Let's just go to the tower. Shelter and medical help should be available there." In an attempt to divert his attention from his two female teammates, Sasuke said, "You want to cough change?" Sakura examined her attire. They were ripped, revealing portions of her navel, waist, bare back, and one shoulder, but not her defining features. She turned red. Naruko didn't care. Her black sports bra did nothing to hide the fact that she was changing into a woman, even though her jacket covered the majority of her body and was open in the middle. Her hand was covering her navel. The guys were having a good time. Even Neji, who is usually cold and uncaring, gave the scene that would make most teenage boys furious a sidelong glance. After that, Sakura pulled Naruko into the cave where they were hiding. "We're changing, so no one come in at any cost, if you value your lives," Naruko declared firmly as the cage's darkness engulfed her. Sasuke crossed his arms as he stood at the door. He had the appearance of a nightclub bouncer. Shortly after, there was a noise emanating from the cave that caused all of the men, including Ino and Tenten, to flush. Sakura groaned out of the cave. "Noah, don't touch it there, idiota." Ah. Naruko's voice emanated from within. "Calm down, I'm not doing anything unusual. I have to be gentle, otherwise it will hurt," she said. Everyone's blushes increased as a result. Ino squeezed out, "Holy shit, what is going on inside?" A bloodthirsty scream erupted from the cave. A mere moment later, Sasuke stood firmly between them, fanning his hands out in an attempt to block them as everyone else, excluding the girls, rushed forward wanting to go in and check on the girls in the cave. He was able to hold firm for a brief moment. "Everything okay inside?" Sasuke gritted his teeth while clinging to the crowd trying to storm in. "Don't come in, we're not decent," Naruko yelled. "Yeah, we're good." It was astonishing that the women had not perished from embarrassment and the men from nosebleed. Give us a minute. Back off, guys. Sasuke heaved them back, urging them with force. Jesus Christ, to think our generation of ninjas are all perverts. The others looked down in embarrassment as Neji glared. Sasuke ignored the white-eyed teenager and casually pulled out a water canteen and began to sip from it. He had a thirst. Sakura called out from inside, "We're coming out." Sasuke erred by focusing on Sakura in particular rather than the other girl. Why did it go wrong? Because of what he witnessed. He choked on the water and coughed violently after swallowing it down the incorrect pipe. Sakura inquired, "Sasuke-kun, are you alright?" After controlling his coughing fit, Sasuke looked at Sakura and nodded. He blushed at that action. Sakura wore a white tank top that hung just above her trousers. It displayed her shoulders and neck, along with a small portion of her creamy navel and bright red bra. She was also wearing extremely short, dark, dirty green, hot pants. She was wearing black boots that were half knee-length. Her hitai and hair remained the same. She was still wearing a sling over her dislocated arm. She blushed when she saw Sasuke staring. "I didn't have any spare clothes, so Naruko lent hers to me," Sakura stated. Everyone's attention was drawn to Naruko's question, "So, are we moving or what?" Her blonde pigtails remained in place, reaching down to her waist and held high on her head to prevent hair from falling everywhere. She was wearing only the black sports bra from earlier and a long-sleeved green short jacket that only covered half of her torso. This successfully accomplished two goals. First, it revealed her toned stomach and slim waist. Second, it revealed her back to the world. She finished off with a pair of black battle boots that matched Sakura's outfit, and she wore short, dark blue denim pants that barely covered her asa, just enough to cup it without making it appear like panties. Her left arm was bound with her hitai. The blonde was so attractive that Shikamaru and his male friends, Rock Lee, Choji, and Neji, minus Sasuke, gaped. She looked at them questioningly. "What?" she inquired, feeling a little irritated by the gaze. Rock Lee began, but was unable to complete, "Your choice in clothing is quitty." Neji concluded, bold, for his teammate, "What do you want?" "I gave my only spare top to Sakura," she replied. "Unless you prefer I wear it," and she goes topless. Sasuke lost it at that point, and blood spurted from his nose. Sakura tended to him as he fell back to the ground. Naruko turned to face Ino and the rest of Shikamaru's team. "You not jealous that Sasuke was embarrassed by the thought of seeing Sakura topless in all her glory?" Naruko was curious. Ino gave a headshake. "I got over him a long time ago. There are more important things in my life than a silly crush back at the academy." Naruko gave Ino the rundown with a sly smile. Despite her refusal to acknowledge it publicly, her life as a man had increased her desire for the other gender, resulting in her becoming a lesbian. Her gaze made Ino cower, and she instinctively covered her chest with her hands. Naruko chuckled. Sakura made a valiant attempt to rouse Naruko from the realm of out coldness to the realm of the waking, but it wasn't very successful. "Sasuke." Naruko called. Naruko smiled as he approached Sakura, who was trembling. "Sasuke." She called out, "Sakura," drawing the pink-haired ninja's attention. "Want to wake him up?" Sakura gave a nod. Naruko grinned. "I know how." Sakura blushed when the blonde girl gestured for her to approach and Naruko whispered something in her ear. Sakura yelled, "I can't do that," which caused her teammate to chuckle. "Want me to do it?" provoked Naruko. "It's either you or me." Sakura huffed and glared at her blonde teammate. "Fine."
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.